Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom.
Everybody see me and hear me clearly? Somebody put something in the chat. Let me know you can see me, hear me clearly. We can set this off. Are we good? Y'all there? All right. Yoshua says sounds good. Princess Simka, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. Chief Peniel, my brother, Governor, Shabbat Shalom. Yehoshua, Shabbat Shalom. Chief Abraham, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom, House of the Maccabees. Shabbat Shalom, Ima. Princess Naomi, Shabbat Shalom. He alone, the dreaded one, shall reign, who was and who will be in glory. He is one. Baruch Shemo, let's get this thing started. All right. Here we go. Giving all honor and praise to the Most High God, who sitteth in the seat of judgment, whose throne is inestimable, the Lord of lords, God of gods, King of kings, the high and lofty one, who inhabiteth eternity, who has no counselor and none to consort with him. He who has reigned from the beginning, before any creature was formed or any green shoot shot forth, before the foundations of the earth were laid, before the legions of angels first assembled. Yea, he who possessed wisdom ere the waters were parted asunder, or the winds of the firmament ever blew. He alone, the dreaded one, did reign, still reigns, and shall reign over all things forever. From everlasting to everlasting, El Shaddai, the Almighty God, the creator of all life, who made man in his own image, to whom he gave a heart of flesh and has imparted him with the five operations of Elohim: eyes to see, ears to hear, smell and taste, that he might enjoy the pleasures of eating and drinking, whereby he may obtain strength and healing from the foods and medicines of the earth that he made for him. And feeling also, both to the touch and inward parts, to know what was in his heart, whether he would serve Ha Elohim, his maker, or no. And besides these, he endowed him with good sense and reason and speech to interpret the things that are seen and heard, that he might comprehend and articulate his thoughts, becoming fully aware, possessing the power to make sound decisions. And in his abounding loving kindness, he granted him understanding, yea, and knowledge also, that he might have withal pursue the things that are pleasing to the Lord and depart from evil. He to whom all honor, worship, and praise is due, the omnipotent God, God of the Hebrews, who made the sea and the dry land, the God of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, the God of Israel, the true and living God, the author of love, time, life, and sound, who spake and it was created, for all things are done at the words of his mouth, who breathed life, the one spirit, into our first father Adam, from whom we all are come to the world, which he made for the serving, nurturing, and nourishment of man, his most precious creation, to whom he gave his most righteous law, for righteousness belonging to him alone, who is just in all things, who keep his covenant and mercy with them that love him and keep his commandments to 1,000 generations, even to the seed of his beloved friend Abraham, even to us, the children of Israel, Ben Isaac and Maccabees, sons of the ancient Maccabees. For he is our God, the ancient of days, for before the day was, is he, the God of the spirits of all flesh, El Quana, the jealous God, El Rakum, the merciful God, El Rapha, the God of healing, the one and only true healer, Hagadol, the great, Hagibor, the mighty, Wehanorah, and the terrible. Elohim Zebaot, the Lord of hosts is his name. He is the King of glory. Blessed be the glorious name of his kingdom forever and ever, for he is good, for his mercy endureth forever. Giving due respect to the chief men, princes, dignitaries, officers, mothers in Israel, brothers and sisters, for you this day Prince Zakaryah, a title bestowed upon me by the chief of chiefs Eleazar ben Lewi ben Dodo, aka Matitya, father of the house of the Maccabees, my teacher and leader, in whose honor I speak and continue the legacy of his name, works, and teachings, in the name of our God and the holy law given us at the mouth of his prophet Moshe, reinstituted by and in accordance with the protocol set forth by Hanasi Yaakov, head knock of all the Hebrews, teacher, leader, and founder of Ben Isaacin, the first Hebrew Israelite congregation in the United States of America, whither we have been exiled because of our sins and the sins of our fathers, whom our God commissioned to bring his people together to the intent that he might open our eyes and give us ears to hear and a heart to perceive, as it is at this day, so that we may keep his commandments, return to him, and repair the breach. I bid you in the ancient tongue of our fathers, Shabbat Shalom Lechem.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom Laka.
Please remain standing. Repeat after me as we recite the Constitution of Israel from Exodus 20 in Hebrew. וידבר אלוהים
וידבר אלוהים
את קהל הדברים
את כל הדברים
האלה לאמור,
האלה לאמור,
אנוכי אל שדי אלוהיך
אנוכי אל שדי אלוהיך
אשר הוצאתיך
אשר הוצאתיך
מארץ מצרים
מארץ מצרים
מבית עבדים,
מבית עבדים,
לא יהיה לך
לא יהיה לך
אלוהים אחרים
אלוהים אחרים
על פניי,
על פניי,
לא תעשה לך פסל
לא תעשה לך פסל
וקל תמונה
וקל תמונה
אשר בשמיים ממעל
אשר בשמיים ממעל
ואשר בארץ מתחת
ואשר בארץ מתחת
ואשר במים מתחת לארץ,
ואשר במים מתחת לארץ,
לא תשתחווה להם
לא תשתחווה להם
ולא תעבדם,
ולא תעבדם,
כי אנוכי אל שדי אלוהיך
כי אנוכי אל שדי אלוהיך
אל כהנה
אל כהנה
פוקד ההון
פוקד ההון
אבות על בנים
אבות על בנים
על שילשים
על שילשים
ועל ריבעים
ועל רבעים
לשונאי
לשונאי
ועושה חסד
ועושה חסד
לאלפים לאוהבי
ואלפים לאוהבי
ולשומרי מצוותיי,
ולשומרי מצוותיי,
לא תישא את שם
לא תישא את שם
אל שדי אלוהיך
אל שדי אלוהיך
לשווא,
לשווא,
כי לא ינקה אל שדי
כי לא ינקה אל שדי
את אשר יישא
את אשר יישא
את שמו לשווא.
את שמו לשווא.
זכור את יום השבת
זכור את יום השבת
לקודשו,
לקודשו,
ששת ימים תעבוד
ששת ימים תעבוד
ועשית כל מלאכתך,
ועשית כל מלאכתך,
ויום השביעי
ביום השביעי
שבת לאל שדי אלוהיך,
שבת לאל שדי אלוהיך,
לא תעשה כל מלאכה,
לא תעשה כל מלאכה,
אתה
אתה
ובנך
ובנך
וביתך
וביתך
עבדך
עבדך
ועמתך
ועמתך
ובהמתך
ובהמתך
וגירך אשר בשעריך,
וגירך אשר בשעריך,
כי ששת ימים עשה אל שדי
כי ששת ימים עשה אל שדי
את השמיים
את השמיים
ואת הארץ,
ואת הארץ,
את הים
את הים
ואת כל אשר בם,
ואת כל אשר בם,
וינק ביום השביעי.
וינק היום השביעי,
על כן ברק אל שדי
על כן ברק אל שדי
את יום השבת,
את יום השבת,
ויהי כלשהו,
ויהי כלשהו,
כבד את אביך
כבד את אביך
ואת אמך
ואימך,
למען יאריכון ימיך
למען יאריכון ימיך
על האדמה
על האדמה
אשר אל שדי אלוהיך
אשר אל שדי אלוהיך
נותן לך,
נותן לך,
לא תרזח,
לא תרזח,
לא תנאף,
לא תנאף,
לא תגנוב,
לא תגנוב,
לא תענה
לא תענה,
ברעך עד שקוע,
ברעך עד שקוע,
לא תחמוד
לא תחמוד,
בית רעך,
בית רעך,
לא תחמוד
לא תחמוד,
אשת רעך
אשת רעך,
ועבדו
ועבדו,
ואמתו
ואמתו,
ושורו
ושורו,
וחמורו
וחמורו,
וכל אשר לרעך.
וכל אשר לרעך.
Shavu, you may be seated. And all the people perceived the thunderings and the lightnings and the voice of the horn and the mountain smoking. And when the people saw it, they removed and stood afar off. And they said unto Moses, speak thou with us, and we will hear. But let not God speak with us, lest we die. And Moses said unto the people, fear not, for God is come to prove you, and that his fear may be before your faces, that you transgress not. And the people stood afar off, but Moses drew near unto the thick darkness where God was. And the Lord said unto Moses, thus thou shalt say unto the children of Israel, ye have seen that I have talked to you from heaven. You shall not make with me gods of silver, neither shall you make unto you gods of gold. An altar of earth thou shalt make unto me, and shalt sacrifice thereon thy burnt offerings and thy peace offerings, thy sheep and thine oxen. In all places where I record my name, I will come unto thee, and I will bless thee. And if thou wilt make me an altar of stone, thou shalt not build it of hewn stones. For if thou lift up thy tool upon it, thou hast polluted it. Neither shalt thou go up by steps unto mine altar, that thy nakedness be not discovered thereon. Baruch Shemo. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Everybody. Before we get started today, I just want to clarify a few things, because there are clear outlined ordinances in the law. And because we were born and raised in the United States of America, or most of us, some of us raised in other countries that are not Israel, and even those of us that might be watching online, that if you even if you live in Israel, it is no longer governed, and in all the countries where we grew up are not governed by the laws of God, the laws of Moses that God gave to Moses in the Torah. Because of that, we have been indoctrinated to think and feel according to the paradigms, which means a way of societal way of thinking, right? That is hard for us to escape from. So when we hear certain things, even though it might coincide with the law, it seems strange to us. And I'm going to start off with the first example, that crickets and grasshoppers and the word does not say beetles in the law in Leviticus 11. It says crickets, right? So, and grasshoppers are clean to eat. And to us, we look at that and say, oh, that's disgusting. But God, because of the way we was raised and where we were raised, but God said these things are clean in the law. So what's wrong with us if we still think that's nasty, right? That means our minds, just like the other laws that we have not conformed to, our minds have not conformed to the order of life that God set up, and we have not aligned our thoughts and our feelings and our opinions with what God said is right and wrong, or clean and unclean. Now, with that being said, according to the law, every animal or beast, right, amongst the cattle, because I'm wording it how it's worded in Hebrew, right? I'm translating, that has a cloven hoof, a hoof that is split in two, right? And chews the cud, meaning the animal has more than one stomach, and all animals that chew the cud eat vegetation. And when they eat the vegetation, they chew it, they swallow it, it goes into a stomach, it comes up regurgitated into their mouth, they chew it again, and it goes back into another stomach. Some animals, these are called ruminants, that chew the cud, have 2 stomachs, some have 4 stomachs, and like cows and like giraffes. So nobody said that our fathers ate giraffes. I don't read that in the book. And it does sound strange. The only reason why it sounds strange is because we never read about it. But that doesn't take away the fact that a giraffe bears all of the characteristics. I mean, look it up for yourselves, but it bears all of the characteristics of a clean animal that we can eat. So even though it sounds strange to us, just like eating a cricket and a grasshopper sounds strange, that doesn't take away from the facts that the animal bears all of the characteristics of a clean beast. Did our fathers eat it? No, because giraffes are not indigenous to the Middle East. Okay, so just because we don't read about them eating it does not mean that it's unclean. We must do our research to find out before we make certain statements. Do I think it's weird to eat a giraffe? Yes, I do, because of where we grew up, and giraffes is not something that people eat. But does that take away from the facts that a giraffe is clean according to Torah, because it bears the characteristics of the clean beast that God said makes it clean? So I just want to clarify that, because if we can't wrap our heads around something as simple as that, we're really going to have a hard time when it comes to the laws that our pride prevents us from humbling ourselves to conform to what is right within our hearts when it comes to our ways. Because we're talking about facts that you can prove and look it up. And if you still don't believe what you find in your research, go cut open a giraffe and find out for yourself and look at his hoofs. And then if you still can't accept that, something's not wrong with the law, something's wrong with us. Okay, so there are things that we need to come to terms with according to Torah that is right in the eyes of God, that if we're going to voice anything against it, let it be known that that's my opinion. And let it not be, this is a fact and that's the way it is. Yes, they did not eat it. We never read about that. That doesn't mean it's unclean. And we have to teach it for what it is according to the facts and according to the law of Torah, right? And so maybe all of us didn't know that. So I'm just telling you that if you want to check it out and look it out for yourself, my teacher always told me, don't take my word for it, look it up for yourself. But make sure you cross-reference every time you look up something, and look it up with different sources to make sure that they match up, and that those sources match up with the Torah, because that is the foundation of all truth. So everything that we look up. With that being said, take note of that last statement, that let the Torah be the foundation of all truth for everything that we research, because today's topic, we're going to dive into the order of life that God established concerning the calendar and the new moons. We're also going to talk about the prophecy of God. We're also going to talk about how the calendar was changed, or why the calendar was changed because of our sins, and God allowed it because we did not keep it the way he gave it to us, right? According to the days that he commanded. And because when God takes something away from you, it's very difficult to find the truth in that matter. We are going to talk about the certain things of how we know the way the calendar was kept in the book, by using references from the book to be able to count days and mark times, along with dates that are given to us in the book with the names of the months, when these names were given, so that we can establish a clear picture of what our calendar looked like at different times, because it had changed, what it looked like, what it looks like today, why it looks like the way it is today, and why it has changed. I'm talking even the Jewish calendar, what we know today as the Hebrew calendar, and it's different to the way our calendars were set up in the book. And we're going to use references from the book so that we can understand this better, not adding our own opinions. Everything that I speak about and tell you, I'm going to show you in the book. I'm not just going to tell you and say, hey, you know, this is the way it is. No, I'm going to show you in the book to back up my claims. And I'm also going to show you with research that I've compiled from different sources that back up what we're reading in the book. Okay. All right. So with that said, first I'm going to start out with some notes that I read, which is going to lead us, that I wrote, that is going to lead us to certain verses in the book concerning the ancient framework of the Hebrew calendar. And why is this important? Because when God took our days away from us, our feast days and our new moons, which that's the first place we're going to go before I actually go into this. Go to Hosea chapter 2. Mishareh Tet Nahaliel Manasseh. the book does not give us a clear picture of what are the clean birds to eat. Pigeon is a clean bird because it was used in offerings, and God does not accept unclean beasts or fowls upon the altar. So yes, that tells us that pigeon is clean. Would I eat a pigeon caught in the city? No, because they eat filth. They drink sewage water, and they eat out of the garbages. They eat chicken bones and hot dogs and whatever else that they could find out of the garbage, which is not what the pigeons ate in the book when they were used for offerings. So I wouldn't eat it because they're more than likely sick, right? But that doesn't mean that they're unclean. And see, I think we have to teach the law clearly. Quails are not unclean. We know that they're clean because God gave them to us to eat in the wilderness. As far as what man is doing and hybridizing, I need to see some information. I need to find out where this information is coming from, and then base it on whether or not it's a solid fact for me to determine that these birds are no longer clean. Because from what we read in the book, and that's what we got to stick to, whatever God said was clean. I mean, if that's the case, I mean, let's get technical here. Let's get really technical here. And I've done the research, and I encourage you to do the same thing. Look up the fruits and vegetables that we eat today, and in your research, dive into whether they are the same varieties of just citrus fruits alone. If they're the same variety of what they ate in the book, which is a citron, right? And see if it's the same fruit today. Even the fruit that's called a citron today, look up to see if it looks the same and has the same characteristics as the citrons 100, 200, 300 years ago, because that's as far back as we can go from documented pictures when you start doing research into things. And look up watermelons. Look at the pictures of watermelons 100 years ago. Check it out. Because they don't look the same. And if it didn't look the same 100 years ago, what make you think it was the same fruit 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 years ago? That's common sense. Look at bananas. Thank you, brother. Tiny little seed specks in there when in ancient, or 100 years ago, not ancient times, 100 years ago, and you can still find some in certain islands today where the seeds are this big, like almost the size of a pistachio nut. And you're going to crunch them seeds when you bite that banana. If that's the case, man, then everything's unclean. You can't eat nothing. Everything's hybrid, and you can't eat nothing. Wisdom is the principal thing. Not only did cross-pollination happen on its own, where the wind blows pollen from a farm, we spoke about this last week and multiple times before. Wind blows the pollen from one plant 50 miles away to another farm or where another plant is growing, and that pollen lands on that plant during pollination, which is the process of how plants get impregnated, right? And, you know, for lack of the horticultural terms that are used, because they don't call it impregnating, but for us to understand. And then that plant ends up growing with the characteristics of the plant whose pollen flew from 50 miles away in the air. And pollen can travel up to 100 miles or more, depending. You know, you got dust in your kitchen right now, in your bathroom, in the floor in your house that came all the way from China. That's how far particles can travel in the air, over oceans. I mean, this is proven fact. So just think about this, and this is how our fruits and vegetables took on different varieties, aside from what man did to create hybrid varieties. And if a man took a bird and created a hybrid variety, there are still places in the world where those two birds exist, then, and one of them happened to be unclean, then that bird where it exists that wasn't hybrid, that family that still kept making children, because it wasn't like they took all the birds of a whole generation and hybrid every single one of them, so that all the rest of the offspring that ever existed in the entire world at that point forward became hybrids. That's not the way this thing works, man. We have to really think logically when we're talking about things that pertain to law, of what God told us is clean and unclean or fit to eat, right? Or with any of the laws that we're talking about. And I want us to keep that in mind when we uncover and explore the research compiled from the ancient calendar of how it was kept, dating all the way back to the time of Noah up until today. And we can't uncover everything, because like I mentioned earlier, when God takes things away from you, you ain't getting it back. You ain't gonna figure it out completely and be like, oh, I got it. I know everything about it now, so I'm gonna make sure I do it that way to make sure I'm doing it the way God set up. No, because he took it away from us as part of our punishment. So you ain't gonna never figure out every little part of it. There's always gonna be a blurry area where you can't see things clearly as to what happened. That's God doing in taking it away from us, right? And if anything, we didn't plant the fruits and vegetables, right? You're not guilty of that, because God said, thou shalt not plant the diverse seeds, right? He knows this is part of our punishment, the same way part of our punishment is to go by the calendar days and the days of the week, because we're not even sure if today's the 7th day, counting from the 7th day of creation, every 7 days until now. We don't know if that was changed by man. And since God said he would take our Sabbaths and our new moons and our feast days away from us, go to Hosea chapter 2, verse 11, please. It's proof that it's been changed. So we don't know. So we're doing it according to what he left us, which we're also going to go over to understand why we keep the calendar days on the days of the Hebrew calendar or the Jewish calendar, because that's all we got. And unless you're going to make up your own calendar and go by it, it still ain't going to be correct. We might as well give us what God left us. So let's be wise, but let's not be over much wise, lest we die before our time. Let's pursue righteousness, but let's not be over much righteous, lest we die before our time and we become presumptuous ones before our God. In researching, we must maintain simplicity of heart. And in order to do that, we must maintain humility, which is the beginning of righteousness, to know that when we look something up, there is always way more information and knowledge that we will not find. And that when we think we know something, we are barely scratching the surface. There is so much more to learn. It's a point of wisdom to understand that you will never attain her completely, that you'll be seeking her for the rest of your days, and you will barely even scratch the surface of what she has to offer. So we're not going to say in any of this info or in any of my teachings, this is the way it is and that's the only way it is. And if you don't agree with it, then you're wicked. No, we can only do that when we're quoting Torah or when we're quoting the Tanakh. That's it. Or the words of the Apocrypha. And even then, that's subject to King James translation, because we don't have the Apocrypha in Hebrew. So unless we have the Hebrew text to read from in the Tanakh, the Torah, and the rest of the Tanakh, then we can't say every phrase that we make is the definitive answer for every little thing that we looked up, because there's so much more to learn. And as long as you look at it that way, you will continue learning. And if you think you got it all figured out, that's the day you chose to stop learning. My teacher used to say, life is a never-ending school. And the day we either, if we decide that we know everything, that's the day you stop learning, or the day you die is the day you stop learning, right? So either way, you're never going to learn it all. And if we think we know it all and we decided to stop learning, we cut ourselves off, because God can't show you nothing else outside of what you think you already know. And that's why humility and in simplicity of heart is so important. So go to Hosea chapter 2, and let's back up to verse 6. Matter of fact, verse 3. Verse 1. Go to verse 1. We're going to read through this because we need to understand what we're talking about. It sometimes leaves things for blurry, or what was the word, ambiguous, where it's not clear, because we pick out certain verses and then we don't understand everything that is being spoken about before that. So we're going to start at the top of the chapter. We're going to go to verse 11. Tamshi.
Say ye unto your brethren, Ami, and to your sisters, Ruhamah, plead with your mother, plead, for she is not my wife, neither am I her husband. Let her therefore put away her whoredoms out of her sight, and her adulteries from between her breasts.
Okay, so who is your mother that God is telling us to plead with? Because in the previous chapter, he said that he's going to call his people Lo Ami and Lo Ruchama, right? Lo Ami is you are not my people. And or maybe it's previous chapter 1. And Lo Ruchama, no mercy. So God is saying, you are not my people, and I will not show you mercy, right? And these were the names that he told a certain woman to name her children, right? And this is what was assigned to Israel. Now, in this particular chapter, he's saying, say to your brethren, Ami, and to your sister Ruama, that you are my people, and mercy, because he will show us mercy. Not at that time, because it was a prophecy that we were going to be punished for our sins. But when that time is up, that God will accept us again as his people in mercy, right? And from what it's looking like and what we read, and we're going to find out through the rest of some more prophecy in this book, is that time is not coming to the world to come. And until then, we're going to suffer the punishments for our sins that we read about in Deuteronomy 28 and Leviticus chapter 26. Tamshi, so the mother that he's speaking about is Jerusalem. If we read throughout the books of the prophets, when he refers to Jerusalem, he refers to Jerusalem as our mother, right? Okay, so the whoredoms that are from before her face and the adulteries from between her breasts, because the adulteries came out from the children that she breastfed, that she nourished up as the city that, where God chose to for his name to dwell in, right? Tamshi, verse 3.
Lest I strip her naked and set her as in the day that she was born, and make her as a wilderness, and set her like a dry land, and slay her with thirst. And I will not have mercy upon her children, for they be the children of whoredoms. For their mother hath played the harlot, she that conceived them hath done shamefully. For she said, I will go after my lovers that give me my bread and my water, and my wool and my flax, mine oil and my drink. Therefore, behold, I will edge up thy way with thorns, and make a wall that she shall not find her paths.
Right. So a lot of this stuff we're reading about is symbolic, and God is saying, like, Jerusalem is our mother, and he says he's going to strip her naked in the day that she was born and make her as a wilderness, and set her like a dry land. Right. Let me go to let me make sure we're reading from the same translation here. Right. So he said he's going to strip her naked, and make her a wilderness, and set her like a dry land, and slay her with thirst. And when he strips her naked, it's like metaphorically, like not stripping a woman naked or the women naked, but the land itself when it was destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar, right? And also Hosea prophesied against the land, the northern kingdom of Israel. This is the time era he lived in, against the 10 tribes and the kings of the northern kingdom of Israel, when the Assyrians came in and took the 10 tribes captive, and they never returned. And these are the people that you hear about called the lost tribes of Israel. It's not the entire 12 tribes. It's in reference to the 10 tribes that never returned back to the land of Israel since we were taken captives, or our brethren, rather say, right? If we be the Maccabees of the house of Levi, then our brethren were taken captives into Assyria and the northern countries and migrated from there. So if you hear people saying, yeah, we never migrated into Europe, well, we migrated into Europe before it was called Europe. We migrated into the northern countries of the Middle East that lead up into Europe, right? So from above Syria and Iran today, you know, you continue going, you're going to end up near the Caspian Sea, which is near the Caucasus Mountains, which is the ancient land of Khazaria, which is where our fathers also dwelt. And the king of Edom took over that land at a certain time period in the medieval era, and they converted to Judaism and then spread out through the countries of Europe, which is where you have the European Jewish people that ended up being funded in 1918 by the King of England, who was Queen Elizabeth's father, and funded them because he has lineage to connect him to the bloodline of David. And I know some people are going to be like, oh, there we go again saying these things. And I can show you the documents where, yes, it's been proven, because our fathers migrated there, escaping persecution from the Romans in the time of Rome, when we were amongst the Knights Templar, because we taught them how to calculate the banking system. The tribe of Judah, the children of the Peretzim, the children of they're called the Pharisees, of the line of Phares, which is the line that David comes out of, the two sons of Judah, Phares and Zerach, right? And those children were held along with the children of Zadok from the house of Aaron of the tribe of Levi. Those two families were held as our two governing families of our people, even when we were in captivity under the Greeks and Romans. But those will just happen to be the two families that conformed to Hellenism, which is the teachings of the Greco-Roman culture and their gods and serving of their gods and the pagan worship that they adopted from countries that they conquered. And our fathers incorporated Babylonian mysticism that our priests came out of Babylon teaching and passed down and incorporated with the law. This was the beginning of Judaism. And I got to clarify these things because we don't know our own history. And this is why it becomes a race thing and a color thing. And we think that, like, God just gathered all Israel's, only the black ones, to New York or to Chicago, and this is how this thing started. No, man, we're all over the earth, in all the nations of the earth, and it's mentioned in Deuteronomy chapter 4, where he scattered us throughout the nations of the earth. It's in Ezekiel chapter 22, I believe. It's all over the book. And we need to pay attention to what we're reading and start to read and study the heritage, the history, and the culture of our people before we make certain statements and start teaching people false doctrines. We don't even realize that we are taking on the ways of the slave master because we still preach and teach hatred, when the law does not convey that type of mentality. That's why we accepted strangers. That's why we treated them fairly. Another thing we need to recognize is that we live in our enemy's land, amongst the nations. My children don't have other Hebrews or Israelite children to go hang around. And many of us on this chat right now can say the same thing. When you grow up in a community of Israelites, things are different. You can separate yourself a lot easier. But I'm not putting my kids in the under four walls in my house and tell them you can't go outside because we can't mingle with the heathen. because then they're going to feel like this way of life is a prison. And when they turn 18, they're going to go, pew, and I ain't going to see them no more. And they're going to live the heathen lifestyle that they always looked out the window and said, I wish I was out there. But if I teach them that we different and take pride in being different and knowing that we got to live amongst these nations, but we don't have to act like them. We don't have to celebrate what they celebrate. We ain't got to eat what they eat because we are God's chosen people and he put us here as part of our punishment. Then they grow up with a sense of pride in our culture, a sense of pride in our God. They grow up strong even in temptation. They grow up strong even under pressure. That when they get released to the wolves, when they're older, they already got a fortitude up here that cannot be broken. Because I ain't keep them cooped up, hidden, and blocked off, talking about we got to be separated. We separated in the midst of the people, just like Jeremiah and Baruch was. That's how mine is. And they know when they go to school. I ain't got to talk to the teacher no more. They go and tell the teacher, no, I can't draw that because it's an image. And in Deuteronomy chapter 4, God commanded us that we can't make the images of men, animals, fish, or anything that swims in the waters or that flies in the air or the sun, the moon, and the stars. I could draw something else, though. They tell the teacher, oh, I can't be present in the classroom at this time if you're going to celebrate Johnny's birthday today. We can't, you have to send me to a different room. I don't make them go to school on the holidays. They don't stand up and cover their heart for the national anthem or the Pledge of Allegiance. My kids is in the midst of the people, separated. And yeah, they're going to always need drilling. They're going to always need for us to rehearse the law in the house to them over and over. And secretly, deep down in their hearts, they're going to always want to do the things that the nations is doing. And that's our job as fathers to hold it down strong in the law and teach our wives and conduct our households according to law so that they can have that strong will to resist it. So certain ways that my teacher lived and that commitments that he made to himself and for his household, I can't do it that way. Yes, he was stronger than me, but also he had many years in marriage with his wife. They already knew that this was for life before certain decrees was made. Go ahead, pick up a new woman and tell her, say, you can't go outside no more. Nope, we don't do dates. We don't do movies. Nope, you can't go there no more. Nope, you can't do that no more. You know, that comes in time, over time of growing and teaching in the law. And if you think, well, nah, it's just that way or else, go ahead, move to a place where it's just y'all. Do it. Do it. Don't talk about it. Do it. Because the system that was set up by my teacher was a different world back then. And there was an Israelite community that I wish I had here where I live. And yeah, I could take my family over there and we could live over there. And my wife already told me, I'll go wherever you go. But at the same time, her mom needs us. And the book tells us to honor your father and your mother, and dig me, teaching my wife the laws of God. But I tell her, nah, we got to leave your moms by herself. You see, everybody's situation is not the same. You got to hold it down in your house and teach it according to Torah, according to the best way that you can hold it down for the sake of keeping your family together, not compromising the law. Don't twist my words. I think I just clearly explained. And so certain things will be held accordingly so that I can create an environment where my family sees that being different is a good thing, even when nobody else is like us. I don't tell my sons you can't go hang around your family and your cousins because they don't live like us. I say we can't go on that day because that's that person's birthday. We can't go on that day because that's a holiday for the nations that we don't observe. And they already understand that. My wife already understands that. She the one explaining it to her own family now. And that's also a necessary thing, where the woman got to come clean to their family and say, this is the way I chose. And rather than the man saying it and looking like he forcing their daughter. Right? So these things have to happen in certain environments so that we can maintain the teachings of these laws, even as we are in the midst of the people. And yeah, I'm going to take her certain places, and I'm going to take my children certain places, and there's going to be heathens all around us. And guess what? They're going to still know that they're different. And they're going to carry it as such. And this is not just me defending like why, you know, we have to carry or why I choose to carry it a certain way with my household. This is because everybody's situation is not the same. And when we teaching, we have to understand that everybody doesn't have a community to lean on. Some people are by themselves. And 9 times out of 10, when you keep somebody in secluded, the first thing they want to do is break free and leave. Whether that be the woman you took for a wife or the children that you raise up all your life, and they can't wait to get away as soon as they get old enough. And if we say that we haven't seen this, even where there is an Israelite community, then we lying to ourselves, because it happens. So I'm just doing it the best way that I see fit, according to what I was taught and according to things that I have learned by watching and paying attention to not make the same mistakes. And I still don't have all the answers. So am I 100% right? No, I'm still wrong. But I got to do it the best way I see fit to keep my household together, because as long as they're around me, they got a better chance. That's love. Now, let's continue where we left off in Hosea chapter 2, verse 5. I'm sorry, verse 6. Oh, we on 7 now. I'm sorry, I was correct the first time. Verse 7.
And she shall follow after her lovers, but she shall not overtake them, and she shall seek them, but shall not find them. Then shall she say, I will go and return to my first husband, and then was it better with me than now. For she did know that I gave.
So she gonna chase after her lovers, but she shall not overtake them. Meaning she gonna chase after them and try to be like them and serve their gods, and they ain't gonna never accept. We talking about Jerusalem, but it's the people of the city that it's talking about, because we're the ones that suffered. The city itself suffered because the land loved the people, loved the God, and therefore took care to nourish the people that was within her as a mother, her children. That's why it's used as reference, as a symbolic reference here. But she said, I will go after my lovers that give me my bread and my water, my wool and my flax, my oil and my drink. And guess what? God said, you're going to chase after them, and you're going to seek them, but you ain't going to find them. You're going to run after them, but you're not going to overtake them. You ain't going to catch up to them. Then shall she say, okay, I'm going to go back to my first husband, for then was it better with me than now. After you see how they dealt with us, all of a sudden we start crying to God. And that's where we at today. Tom Sheep, verse 8.
For she did not know that I have gave her corn and wine and oil, and multiplied her silver and gold, which they prepared for
Bill. Right. So we didn't understand that God gave us everything. We thought we did it ourselves. We didn't understand that God is who made the crops grow. God is who gave us that land. God is who give you favor. God is who prosper the works of our hands. Tom Sheep, verse 10.
And now will I discover her.
Not a question, a statement.
And now will I discover her lewdness in the sight of her lovers, and none shall deliver her out of mine hand.
Tom Sheep.
I will also cause all her mirth to cease, her feast days, her new moons and her Sabbaths and all her solemn feasts.
He will cause all of her mirth to cease, her feast days, her new moons, her Sabbaths, and all her solemn feasts. One brother that I have, Yehoshua, some of y'all know him. He was my scribe before my son. He's the scribe. Yeah, I'm giving him the name, the scribe. Right, and he's my scribe. So y'all ain't gotta say, oh, he's giving out titles. No, he's my scribe. All right, and we did some research to find out that when we were checking on how to count the new moons, right, or how it was counted in the book, that, you know, from down here it looks like, I mean, you could see it, but it's very faint. And it has to be a very clear night, that before the moon is completely black, right? On the night of that night where you don't see no moon, the night before is called the waning crescent, and the night after is called the waxing crescent. This is according to modern, you know, astrologist terms, right? And our fathers didn't call it that. That's not in the book. But those were the 3 days that were celebrated of the new moon. And we do read about the new moon being celebrated. Offerings went up. It's commanded in Numbers chapter 28. Tells about the offerings and burnt offerings that were offered on the new moons. Another thing I want to mention is that the word for new moon in Hebrew is Kodesh, right? And that is the same name for month. So again, I'm going to ask you again to try to think outside of English for a second, and let's think according to Hebrew, so that when you read the word month in the book, you know that it's saying new moon. It's the same word, Kodesh, right? And that's what our fathers called it, the Kodesh. They didn't call it Yareach Kadash, which means is translated to moon new in Hebrew. And that's what people call it today. But in the book, in the Tanakh, throughout the Tanakh, it is referenced as Kodesh, right? And so that is the word for month. It is the word for new moon. It was one word. It wasn't two separate words, right? And so we can use those words interchangeably, because the word Kodesh might be in reference to the whole time of a month, or it could be in reference to the 3 days of the new moon, or it could be in reference to the beginning of the month, right? And so for a while, it boggled me, and I couldn't understand how they counted the first day of the month. Was it the first day of the waning crescent? Was it the second day when the moon was completely hidden, or was it the third day, the beginning of the waxing crescent, which is the first sliver that you see on the other side? And so one sliver is on one side, then it's completely black, and then the next sliver is on the other side. So this would be day one, this would be day two, this would be day three, right? And so then through research, using the book also as reference, we found out that the first day of the month would have been the first day of the waxing crescent, right? And so we're going to dive a little bit into that. But before we move on, let's note here that in verse 11, God said he's going to take our Sabbaths, our feast days, and our new moons, which means our months, basically, away from us. So now our months are out of whack. The day that it comes in is not the day that it came in ancient times. And when me and this brother Yehoshua, my scribe, was doing the research, we were counting the days according to the app of how many days it was from one new moon to the other in like 3 different new moon apps to see if they coincided, because my teacher always taught us you must cross-reference. You can't use one source for your information. And in all 3 of the apps, because calendars will tell you the new moon, like calculating from the year before when they made the calendar. So the apps are the closest thing, because it's based on either what they tell us is satellite imagery, or people actually looking in telescopes and calculating it, right? And so or, you know, when it's connected to technology to be able to record everything, basically. And so we checked it out in these apps, and not all of them are 28 days. Not all of them were 29 days. Not all of them were 30 days. None of them were 31 days, though. And so I said, well, that's because God took away our new moons from us. That's why it's different. In my studies, I learned that to be true, but also there is things that need to be explained along with that. So I'm going to start reading to you some of the notes that explain to us how we observed the new moon in the book, how our months were calculated and counted, and we will cite different verses throughout the book to be able to determine this. Why is this important? Because we need to understand that when God takes something away from us, it is not our job to go seek it out to try to take it back, right? When your parents ground you, it is not up to you to go and break the rules of being grounded to show them, look, I'm going to do it right now. I'm going to do it right now. No, I said stay in your room, boy. Don't come out. Don't come out and tell me nothing. Just do what I told you and accept your punishment. And if that's the case, then we have to accept our punishment and adhere to what the calendar and the days that God left for us. Because God does all things. Shall there be evil in the city and the Lord have not done it? And if that's the case, then when he allowed man to change the calendar, it's another thing I hate to hear, that people always say, oh, well, you know, the words of the Bible was translated, man. Man changed the word of God. As if we have no faith that our God has the power to preserve his own word. What God are they thinking of, the ones that are saying this? Because if your God is not capable of preserving his own word, then you don't need to be serving that God. And that ain't the Most High God, because he does all things and his hand is in all things, and everything that is done is at his word and his will by his decree. So if man changed it, guess what? God told them to change it. And we just got to live with it. And that's part of the punishment of our sins. But one thing he ain't going to let them change is his word, because or else he wouldn't be merciful. How else will we return to him? And since we read over and over where he's like, return to me in the book, what, they changed that part too? They tricked us by saying he's saying return to me, but they tricked us on how to return to him. And God let them do that because he's sitting back going, yeah, I said return to me, but psych, y'all can't return to me. I blocked you. That's not the way God works. That's not the God that we serve. That's not the God who created the heavens and the earth. That's not the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who keeps his covenant to the children of his people forever. So wake up, Jacob. And people out there making these videos talking about the word has been changed, or we're going to do it the way we're doing it because we don't trust man, that man did this. Accept your punishment, man, and seek God in simplicity of heart. Okay? And let's do this the best that we to the best of your efforts every single day in humility, and seek God through the words that he left for us as a blueprint on how to serve him. And don't add and don't take away. And if you're going to do some research and you're going or we're going to share research, cross-reference everything, and make sure that you cite your references and your sources, and don't just tell people something and expect that we should all just believe it unless you're reading words directly out of the Tanakh. So, before we explore what the ancient Hebrew calendar looked like and how the months were observed, numbered, and named, how we observed, numbered, and named the months, how they were recorded and changed throughout the generations of the diaspora. The diaspora is the dispersing of our people all over the face of the earth, dating way back to when the 10 tribes were taken captives out of Assyria. That's about 2,800 years ago, give or take 100 years. Okay? Until today, right? Or maybe 3,000 years ago, around that. Because Moses lived about 3,500 years ago. Okay? Do the math. Use the book to do the math. Don't listen to every historical account that you might read. Use the book to back it up. Okay, so before we go into all of that, we must first learn how the new moon was counted and observed by the ancient Hebrews in biblical times, adhering strictly to the historical accounts recorded in the Tanakh. So let us keep in mind as we read that every word in the Torah is a direct quote from the mouth of God himself, spoken directly to Moses and written word for word by Moses on Mount Sinai, and that all of the words written in the Tanakh were recorded by faithful men who were handpicked by the Most High God of the spirits of all flesh, who knows all the hearts of men, who alone knoweth the hearts of men. The idea that the moon's original cycle was 28 days is a common misconception. Likely because we have been taught in school that the moon is a rock that orbits around the earth and that it reflects the light of the sun on the part of its face that is not being blocked by the earth, because they tell us the earth is a ball and that at certain times the earth is in between the moon and the sun, which is impossible according to reading that we went over last week that proves that the sun and the moon are inside the firmament, which is part of inside the heavens over the earth, not space, the firmament. And above that is waters, okay? And all the stars are inside the firmament. And by the way, what the book calls stars is what scientists are also calling planets, okay? I don't read that word in the book, planets, so I ain't gonna use those words. And neither should you if we believe God. We should learn to speak according to what God is teaching us through the words in this book. So, we've been taught in school that the moon is a rock, that it orbits around the earth, and that it reflects the light of the sun on the part of its face that is not being blocked by the earth. So at a certain part, when you see the crevice, they say that's the earth blocking the light from hitting the whole moon, so you just see the part where the sun is hitting. No, that's not what God said. As it progressively, as it progressively grows in degrees as it moves through its orbital cycle. This is what we were taught in school. This is not the way God described it in Genesis chapter 1. Scientists believe that the moon is moving around the earth in what they call the sidereal orbit in 27.3 days. And in between the earth from new moon to new moon and the sun in 29.53 days, or what they call the synodic cycle. Because a month cannot have a half day and purely observation-based lunar calendar naturally alternates between 29 and 30 days, never 28, 31, or a static 30. We're talking about a lunar observed calendar, right? Which is what some people think our fathers kept, and this is not true. And I'm going to prove that with the book, not my own words, okay? Not some research that I compiled that you can't back up with the book either. But the sidereal orbit is based on the model of a solar system. See, because while I'm compiling notes, I got to write what they said that is real and what the book says and show how what they said is fake by according to what the book said, so that we could have a better understanding. But the sidereal orbit is based on the model of a solar system. The absurd belief that the sun, which is supposedly traveling through space at 514,000 miles per hour, with the earth revolving around it while it's traveling, and the earth, while it's revolving around it, is spinning on its axis, which is tilted at 23.44 degrees, by the way, at 1,000 miles per hour is spinning, or 0.00064 RPM, rotations per minute, which that's slow. 0.00694 rotations per minute, but it's moving 1,000 miles an hour. And we're supposed to believe this garbage. So they expect us to believe that it takes 24 hours for the earth to make a complete rotation on its axis at an angle while it's spinning 1,000 miles an hour. But yet, even that fast, it takes a whole 24 hours for this side of the earth to get to the same side it was as it spins at 1,000 miles an hour while it's going around the sun, spinning. I can't even do it with my fingers. And nobody can make a model of that because it wouldn't hold up by itself. But you can make a model of the earth on 4 pillars with a firmament and something that blocks the water from above from coming down. You ain't God, so you can't put an adamant, but you could put a glass over it and put the waters above it. You can make it and have it look like what the book describes, but you can't make a model of the earth and make it work and move the same way that they explain to us that this thing works. It's impossible. That's why you will never find a model that works just like the way they teach us. However, historical, biblical, and archaeological evidence proves that the ancient Israelites did use a 360-day schematic calendar featuring 12 months of exactly 30 days each during and prior to the Exodus era, and after that, all the way into the time of the Maccabean or Hasmonean era. And here's how we're going to prove it. The flood chronology to start with. The clearest mathematical evidence of a 30-day month in the Torah is found in the book of Genesis. Go to Genesis chapter 7, please. In the account of Noah's Ark, the Torah provides highly specific timestamps. So first we're going to go to Genesis chapter 7, verse 11, to prove that Noah kept 30-day months. In the 600, time sheet, let's read from Genesis 7, verse 11. And I'm going to be spot checking and hitting verses because we got a lot of ground to cover today. But I'm going to hit the important verses and make sure you go and review these things on your own. You can read the whole chapters, or don't take notes. Don't write nothing today because that's a skill you can't do on Shabbat. But you can mark it in your phone in your notes and put these chapters to go reference at a later date. Time sheet, Genesis chapter 7, verse 11.
In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month.
Second month, okay? Note that the month doesn't have a name. It's called the second month, okay? This is God talking to Moses and told him what to write, okay? So God called it the second month.
The 17th day of the month.
On the 17th day of the month,
The same day were all the fountains of the great deep broken up, and the windows of heaven were opened.
Okay, here's a better translation, right? The numbers of the month and the dates are the same, but I'm going to read you this translation, which marks verse 11, translated from Hebrew. Reads, in the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month, on the 17th day of the month, on that day, all the fountains of the great deep burst apart. Fountains of the great deep. So waters were shooting. I just want to create a clear picture for us, according to what it says in the Torah. The waters were shooting out from the bottom of the ocean. The ground was breaking open. Okay? And the floodgates of the sky broke open, is what it says. The word is translated for the windows of heaven is the arubot, and that's the only place where this word was translated in English as windows, even though you will find it in the Hebrew dictionary as windows. But a window in any part of the book that was called, like in a house, was called a kalon, and the window that God commanded Moses to make in the ark was called a what's the word? It's not called a arubot. It's not called a kalon. It's called, no, the wrong word. Hold on. Oh, I got you. I got you. Wait a minute. Okay. It's called a zohar. That's the word he used for telling Noah to make a window in the ark in Genesis, when he told him make windows to the ark, window above, right? Zohar means midday, or Zahar is a reference to midday or noon. This is where we get Zaharayim, right? The name for the noon prayer in English, right? And David said, I pray to thee 3 times a day, morning, noon, and evening, right? And Zaharaim is the word for noon, right? But Zohar also means to shine, a shining light. So meaning that when God is telling them to make an opening in the top for the light to shine in the ark, right? Okay. And the word arubot translates to floodgates, which is a more accurate word in English, even though in Hebrew it would mean a breaking forth, right? From the heavens, which means the waters for above broke, the firmament broke open for waters to pour out of the heavens. Not just rain, it was waterfalls coming out the sky. Okay. All right, so that was the 17th day of the 2nd month. Go to Genesis chapter 8. Let's go to Genesis chapter 8, verse 3. And read for us, please.
And the waters returned from off the earth continually, and after the end of the 150, the waters were abated, and the ark rested.
Okay, take note of that. After 150 days, the waters were abated. Okay? Right? We got that? After 150 days, the waters were abated. Tom Sheet.
And the ark rested in the 7th month on the 17th day of the month upon the mountains of Ararat.
Okay, and the ark rested upon the mountains of Ararat on the 17th day of the 7th month. 150 days, the waters were upon the earth, and it says in the Hebrew that the waters were diminished when it says abated. They were diminished enough for the tops of Mount Ararat to be seen. And they were upon the earth from that point, from the 2nd month and the 17th day of the month, 150 days. And on the exact same day, 5 months later, exactly to the day, the 17th of the 2nd month to the 17th of the 7th month, 150 days divided by 5, because one is the 2nd month, one is the 7th month. That means there was 5 complete months in between, according to what we are reading here in Genesis. And 150 days divided by 5 gives you 30 days for each month. It's the calendar that Noah followed. Mind you, it says the 7th, the 2nd month, and the 7th month. It doesn't give us names for those. Keep that in mind as we read or as we go through this study. Okay? That's our first reference, that we use a 30-day calendar even in the time of Noah. God said that was a month, that 5 months is 150 days. That makes each month 30 days. God told Moses what to write. Let's keep that in mind. Okay? God explicitly states that this exact 5-month duration lasted precisely 150 days. 150 divided by 5 months equals 30 days per month. This serves as an internal proof that the earliest chronological framework recorded in the Hebrew text of the Torah utilized a static 30-day as the standard for a month. Now, Egyptian historical context. Moses, raised in the house of Pharaoh, was not only educated according to the immersive studies of Egyptian royalty, because all Egyptian royalty were educated, which included mathematics, science, chemistry, linguistics, which is the study of languages, the arts, theology, and homeopathy, which is the study of how herbs are used to treat illnesses, because that was their medicine back then, even the Egyptians, right? But also, even though they were doing surgery, this is how come when they it was found that that one of the mummies that they uncovered had drill holes in his brain, in his scalp, in the skull, there were tiny little holes that were drilled, that they could tell were drilled, that was a surgery. And it was proven that that king through history had brain trauma. So he likely developed swelling of the brain, which is today they still use this practice to relieve swelling of the brain or the pressure of a tumor by drilling holes in the brain to let the pressure in the scalp, in the skull, to let the pressure release. They did that, and they found that in studies in Egypt to prove that they were doing tooth extraction in Egypt. They were doing surgeries in Egypt, and they used herbs over their masks when they were embalming bodies so they wouldn't pass out. Because right today, if you use embalming fluid to embalm a body and you don't have a gas mask on, it'll kill you. You'll pass out and die. So they knew what they was using. They knew what they was doing. And they used homeopathy. They said, but also Moses was not only educated in these, but astrology, alchemy, sorcery, magic, and metaphysics as well. That's why when the Pharaoh saw him throw down his snake, he was like, throw down his staff and it turned into a serpent. Pharaoh was like, very well, Moses, I'll play along. I'm quoting the movie, but we can see that it didn't faze him by what we read in Exodus, right? And he was like, that ain't nothing. Janus, Jambres, do the same thing, man. Show him. And everything of the plagues that Moses brought or that God sent him to bring upon the land of Egypt, the Egyptians magicians did the same. And if you think that Moses wasn't taught in these things, then we are naive, because he grew up in Pharaoh's house as royalty, right? So, that ain't in the book. Well, you could leave it at that if you want, and I'm going to stick to what common sense would teach us, that Moses, being considered royalty, would have been educated in everything that Pharaoh's son was educated in. And look it up for yourself about how royalty in Egypt was taught and educated. During the time of the Exodus, the ancient Egyptian calendar was highly standardized and did not rely on the phases of the moon. It consisted of 12 months of exactly 30 days each, plus 5 intercalary days added at the end of the year to total 365 days. Yes, they did use a 365-day calendar. Yes, they did add leap years, right? When Moses led Israel out of Egypt, a 12-month, 30-day civil standard was dominant administrative system of that region. That's what he had been practicing, and that's what we still went by. Outside of the text, ancient Near Eastern administrative records show that while the religious calendar relied, because we could be talking about referencing that they're calling the Hebrew calendar religious, or religious calendars from the Sumerian era, the Egypt era during that time, right? Because we got to understand that when we do research, they call us religious, right? So this could be a reference to the Hebrew, what they will call Jewish or Hebrew calendar of ancient times, or the religious Near Eastern religions, right? So that this religious calendar relied on witnessing the physical new moon. Governments used a 360-day schematic year. We did not go outside and look at the moon. God spoke against that and told us not to do that. So instead, we had a calendar that was set. And this is why we observed the new moon through offering offerings, and the 3 days were observed. The first day of the waning crescent, the second day where the new moon completely hid herself, and then the third day of the waxing crescent. And the third day, when the moon first showed her first piece to be revealed, was the beginning of the month, confirming that a standardized 30-day month framework was used by ancient Israelites alongside their observances to the new moon. Don't worry, I'm gonna get into the book so that we can back up these claims that you hear me stating. When the Israelites left Egypt, the calendar the ancient Hebrews followed was a lunar solar system that had 12 months, with the Exodus month, Abib, designated as the first month of the year. Now, when you hear me say they followed a lunar solar calendar, these are just words for people to be able to understand. That's not what the book called it. But when you're explaining to people, they have a lunar calendar and they have a solar calendar. So what we're saying is that they did not only observe a solar calendar, and that's why it was 365 days, and that's what they got that from Egypt, and that's not what God set up. We can see that Noah also did practice a 360-day calendar year, because each of the months were 30 days times 12. That give you 360 days. But according to the seasons and how they're set up, you can check it out for yourself, do the math yourself, follow a calendar yourself, count the days yourself, that when you get to 360 days, if you continue each year consecutively, 360, 360, 360, 360, then you're not going to have Abib, the 14th of Abib, or the evening at Abib at the same time of the year in the next 5 or 10 years. It's going to be in the wintertime, or it's going to be in the summertime, because the calendar is going to keep backing up, because the seasons that we read in Genesis are according to the sun, the moon, and the stars. So that tells us that them calling it a lunar solar calendar is not a bad thing, because the calendar is set up according to the sun and the moon, according to what we read in Genesis, and the stars, because the stars, the constellation of the stars, are always set in the same exact place. The stars don't move. They move together as a whole, but the stars individually don't move around the place. They move in a pattern that is aligned with the heavens, as the sun and the moon take their different cycles throughout the seasons in different parts of the sky that we observe from wherever we are on the earth, on the ground at that time. I know it's a lot to wrap our head around, but we can't make these claims if they don't match up with what the book says and what our eyes are seeing from the ground. They got to match up. And from what we read in the book, it matches up exactly what we're seeing from the ground with our own eyes. I'm not going to believe no research or no book that doesn't, or teachings from school that don't line up to what I can see with my own eyes. In academic biblical criticism, the book of Daniel's prophecies, especially the references to the abomination of desolation and the times and a half, or half a time, right? Actually, let's hold it right there. We need to go to Leviticus chapter 23 based on the point that I just made. Go to Leviticus 23 and start from verse 4, please.
What man soever...
Leviticus 23, verse 4. I'll start reading. When you get it, you can join in. These are the feast of the Lord, even holy convocations, which you shall proclaim in their seasons. In the 14th day of the first month at even is the Lord's Passover. In the 14th day of the month at even is the Lord's Passover. At even, before the sun go down, is the Passover. Right? Okay. Second here. Before we go any further, just to clarify and build on what we were going over last week, in Exodus chapter 12, verse 18, in the first month, on the 14th day of the month at even, you shall eat unleavened bread until the 20th day of the month at even. So you start eating unleavened bread at even, which in this case, we read in different parts of the book where even could mean the time before sunset. It could mean sunset itself. And in Genesis chapter 1, it means the entire period of the night. But only in Genesis chapter 1, because there's no other reference in any other part of the book where it mentions Ereb being the entire nighttime to complete the cycle of a day, except Genesis chapter 1. Again, I say this phrase over and over again. The book tells us what words mean, and God is teaching us how these words are used according to the context in which he used them, especially in the Torah, when these are the words directly from the mouth of God. So in the first month, on the 14th day of the month at even, you shall eat unleavened bread, because when the sun is down on the 14th day of the month, it becomes the 15th day of the month. That's the changing of a day until the 120th day of the month at even. So here's where we can figure out that the day ends at even, right? And doesn't start in the morning, because you got to start eating unleavened bread at the 14th at even, and you got to eat it throughout the 7 days until the 21st day of the month at even. It's clear. It's clear. Back to Leviticus chapter 23. On the 15th day of the same month is the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So if even didn't mark the time of when a day changes, why did God tell us that in one chapter on the 15th day of the month begins the Feast of Unleavened Bread? And in Exodus chapter 12, he tells us at even on the 14th day, you should start eating unleavened bread. What's wrong here? Because if that even until the morning was not the 15th day, then looks like we're celebrating 7.5 days of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, starting it a half a day early. No, there's only one logical explanation. That when he said start eating it at the 14th day of even, is because even marks the beginning of the 15th day. Oh man, this is crazy how we got to be explaining this to grown adults. But this is when we don't have faith in God, when we're not faithful to God. We don't believe our God. We don't believe the words that he spoke to Moses, and we need all these other pieces of evidence to back it up, and translations and people's opinions and ideas and doctrines to fit along with it. No, man, the words is going to say what they mean and mean what they say. And if you don't go by exactly what the words say, you don't believe God. It's as simple as that. You let your son do that to you and see how you feel. Let him check behind everything you said and see if you're going to count as if he believes you. Now, that's one thing if you're going to look up a word that you said that you didn't know what it meant, because that's what we do when we read the law. Ain't that right? Because he wants a better understanding of what you said. But imagine him saying, I don't know if that's correct, Abba. Let me go YouTube this. Let me go Google this to see if what Abba said is correct. Now, if you're looking for evidence to support what your Abba said, to prove to other people, which is what we also do in here, that's honor. Right? On the 15th day of the same month is the Feast of Unleavened Bread unto the Lord. 7 days you must eat unleavened bread. On the first day you shall have an holy convocation. You shall do no servile work therein. We're not going to go over what the feast day is about. I want to make a point according to how the days were counted, right? How the months of the year were counted. But you shall offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord 7 days. And the 7th day is an holy convocation. You shall do no servile work therein. You got it?
Yeah.
Okay, Tom Shea.
And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, When ye be come into the land which I have given unto you, and shall reap the harvest thereof, then ye shall bring a sheaf of the first fruits of your harvest unto the priests. And he shall wave the sheaf before the Lord to be accepted for you on the morrow after the Shabbat.
The priest shall wave
it.
The priest shall wave it. Okay, you said it right, the Shabbat. And I'm glad you said it that way, because in Hebrew, the word Shabbat is used in this verse. Shabbat or HaShabbat is the only reference to the 7th day of the week throughout the entire Tanakh. If it says it is a Sabbath to you, it likely says the word Shabbaton. And throughout the rest of this chapter, the word Shabbat is only used as a reference to the 7th day of the week. It is called HaShabbat, right? Kodesh. What verse was that?
That was
11.
Yeah.
Okay. HaShabbat is what it says in Hebrew. The Sabbath, right? So it's not just a Sabbath. It's the Sabbath, meaning this is the 7th day of the week, which tells us that after the Feast of Unleavened Bread, God commands us immediately after telling us to observe the Feast of Unleavened Bread from the 15th day of the month to the 21st day of the month, right? At even, right? Then after he tells us that when you come to the land, you reap the harvest, then you shall wave a sheaf before the Lord to be accepted for you on the morrow after the Sabbath. Which Sabbath is he talking about? Because there's 52 of them in a year. So this Sabbath is specifically right after the Feast of Unleavened Bread, telling us how to observe the Feast of Unleavened Bread, because it's in reference to the Sabbath that ends the Feast of Unleavened Bread. the morrow after the Sabbath of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And here's how we figure that out. Tom Sheep, verse 12.
And ye shall offer that day when ye wave the sheep and he lamb without blemish of the first year for a burnt offering unto the Lord, and the meat offering thereof shall be 2/10 deals of fine flour mingled with oil, an offering made by fire unto the Lord for a sweet savor and a drink, savor, and the drink offering thereof shall be of wine. The fourth part of a hint.
Tom Sheep, verse 14.
And ye shall eat neither bread nor parched corn nor green ears until the same day that ye have brought an offering unto your God. It shall be a statute
forever throughout your generations in all your dwellings. So God gonna tell us, don't eat bread, don't eat parched corn, don't eat fresh ears on a random Sabbath until this random Sabbath day, until the morrow after this random Sabbath day. So when we were supposed to stop eating bread, if it wasn't the Sabbath that ended the Feast of Unleavened Bread, then when were we supposed to stop eating lechem, which is bread with leavening, which is what it says in Hebrew for the word for bread in this verse? When were we supposed to stop eating it before we could start eating it again until we brought our offering on this morrow after the Shabbat? It's clear when we break it down, because HaShabbat is the word for Sabbath in verse 11. It's right after we hear about the law of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the ordinance of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And it tells you can't eat regular bread again until you bring this offering that's supposed to be offered on the morrow after this HaShabbat, the seventh day of the week, because HaShabbat is only a reference to the seventh day of the week. So we see that it's talking about right after the Feast of Unleavened Bread, because now you could eat bread again after you bring this offering, which means you had to have some period where you were not allowed to eat bread before you could start eating it again after you offer this offering. And that's what tells us that was the 7 days. This is immediately after the 7 days of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And then it ended on the same day every year on a Shabbat. That's why on the morrow after the Shabbat, you could bring your offering and begin to eat bread again, because you ain't got to wait a few days or a week now to start eating on regular bread again, because the calendar don't match up. You know what I'm saying? Man messed it up. This is when we still had it the way God gave it to us, which means there was 30-day months. And yes, they added intercalary days, just like Moses learned in Egypt, to add a 365-day year. You know why? So that the days could remain at the same season that God commanded us to observe every year. Or else, how could our days be set up around harvest times if we had a 360-day, 12-month, 30-day a month year? It wouldn't work, because you figure it out. Don't take my word for it. Go look at it. Count the days yourself. If you do a 360-day year, 12 months of 30 days, in 5 years, your year going to be starting in the springtime or the summertime, or rather say the summertime instead of springtime. And if you keep doing it, it's going to end up starting in the fall instead of the springtime, until it relapses itself after so many years. So it still matches up with sun and moon. And that's why those 5 days are added. They're called intercalary days. And that's why, according to what scientists have uncovered, still according to the way God set it up, because everything that they find out is not false. Everything that they find out is not untrue. Sometimes it's just God showing them how they did it so that he could prove that he made it, and that what Genesis 1 is saying is true, so that they could be like, oh, wow, maybe I should believe God. Or more of the people of the world could see that what scientists found is matching up with the book, and then they'll believe God. See how merciful he is? Everything scientists say is not true, but we got to be able to use the book to determine, to use the book as the foundation for all truth, to measure every single piece of information that speaks about what God set up, about the earth, about the order of life, about everything, about what words mean. We got to use the book as our foundation of truth. And if our research and our studies or the information that we come across does not match up with the book, then it's garbage, ashpa, basura, trash. And we got to stick to only what the book says and stop picking and choosing what we want to accept. Stop siding with opinions because it makes our lifestyle, it's convenient for our lifestyle. Right? Or I don't have to change the way I was already thinking. You know what I mean? Because I already know how the sun and moon is set up. They taught me in school. And that's the mind of a fool. That's not somebody that's coming to seek the Lord with simplicity of heart. And there's no humility in that. So it says, you can't eat bread, which is lechem, which is the word for bread with leavening, nor toasted grains, quali, with carmel, until the self-same day that you have brought an offering to your God. This is why we wait until the morrow after the Shabbat day, after the Feast of Unleavened Bread, because our calendar is all out of whack today. So that means in ancient times, the 14th day of the month was a Shabbat, which means the 7th day of the month was a Shabbat, which means the 21st day of the month was a Shabbat, because that's the day we end the Feast of Unleavened Bread. The 15th day would have been the first day of the week. And when you begin the Feast of Unleavened Bread, you eat it for 7 days. The 7th day is a Shabbat. And then tomorrow after the Shabbat, you bring your offering and you could go back to eating regular bread again. It's clear in these verses if we break it down according to what we read without adding to or taking away. And that gives us a sense to how the calendar was set up, because every 7th, 14th, 21st, and 28th day of every month was a Shabbat. Now, how was the months counted? Or at least, matter of fact, at least we know Abib was set up that way. Because if we got 30-day months now, the next month, the 7th ain't going to be on a Shabbat. But we know Abib was set up that way. And so now the next year, you got to add some days on to make Abib come in where the 7th, 14th, 21st, and 28th is on the Shabbat again. And you can't do that with 360 days. The book is showing us how they counted. Don't take my word for it. Do your research. Figure it out. Draw it out. Write out a calendar. Pull stuff off of the internet. Compare it with what we're reading in the book, and it must match up. It must match up. Because this is what God told Moses to write in Leviticus chapter 23. We just read what God told Moses to write concerning the flood in Genesis chapters 7 and 8. Okay. From there, let's go back. Let's go to, okay. Let's go to 1 Samuel chapter 20 concerning the new moon. Right? Okay, so 1 Samuel chapter 20, and start reading for us from verse 4. This is when David was on the run from Saul, and he said, man, Jonathan, him and Jonathan was in the field, and he said, man, you don't have to let me know if your father determined evil against me, man. He goes, because I ain't coming. See, normally I will come to the new moon celebration and eat dinner at the king's table, because they observed 3 days, which is going to be revealed to us in this chapter. And David's telling you, look, man, I ain't going to show up, man. Your father's chasing me to kill me, man. So you go and you find out if this evil determined towards me from him. And, you know, if not, I'll come. If not, and if so, I'm out of here. And so, verse 4, Tom Shee.
Then said Jonathan unto David, whatsoever thy soul desireth, I will even do it for thee. And David said unto Jonathan, behold, tomorrow is the new moon, and I should not fail to sit with the king at meat. But let me go, that I may hide myself in the field unto the 3rd day at even. If thy father
Okay, so David said, tomorrow is the new moon, and I'm not coming to sit at the king's table. But let me go that I could hide myself in the field until the third day at even, because the third day at even is the last day of the new moon. Remember, we counted the new moon. Day ends at night. The new moon was or the month was not determined. That began, again, proving that the days began at night by the first sighting of that sliver of the new moon, the waxing crescent. So that was the first day of the month, and that would have been the third day of the new moon celebration. So David's saying, hey, let me go and hide myself until that day, because after that time, I ain't gonna have to show up at the king's table no more, because they had a dinner. They ate their dinner around sunset. We weren't nocturnal people. They wasn't eating all hours of the night like we do. Okay. She and David said to Jonathan, behold, tomorrow is the new moon, and I should not I should not fail to sit with the king at meat, but let me go that I may hide myself in the field until the third day at even. Tamshi.
If thy father at all miss me, then say, David earnestly asked leave of me that he might run to Bethlehem his city, for there is a yearly sacrifice there for all the family.
Mm-hmm.
If he say thus, it is well, thy servant shall have peace. But if he be very wroth, then be sure that evil is determined by him.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore thou shalt deal kindly with the servant, for thou hast brought thy servant into a covenant of the Lord with thee. Notwithstanding, if there be in me iniquity, slay me thyself. For why shouldest thou bring me to my father?
To thy father.
To thy father. Right.
So David said, look, man, just let me know if your father is evil determined towards me from your father. And if not, if there is, tell me. And if not, slay me thyself, if there be any iniquity in me. But why would you bring me to deliver me to your father? And Jonathan said,
And Jonathan said, far be it from thee, for if I knew certainly that evil were determined by my father to come unto thee, then would not I tell it thee? Then
Jonathan said, man, come on, man. You don't think I would tell you? If I knew? No, I'm going to say something. All right.
Then said David to Jonathan, who shall tell me? Or what if thy father answers thee roughly?
Right. So a lot of people say here, well, Jonathan violated because he went against his father and sided with David, which is clearly not what we read in the book. We never read Jonathan transgressed or dishonored his father by siding, or rather say delivering David out of his own father's hand. Jonathan understood that David did nothing wrong. He also understood that he was God's anointed, and Jonathan was not going to stand in the way of God, because Jonathan was a God-fearing man, even if it meant that he had to hide certain things from his father, right? And this is where wisdom is the principal thing, right? This was a case that teaches us that siding with God over everything and everyone is the key to prove our fear of God, right? Even if against his own father, who in this case, he didn't go and rebuke his father and tell him, you wrong, David did. He questioned that one time. He said, what has David done? He haven't done nothing. But he never told his father, you wrong, Abba. That's why I sided with David. No, it didn't go down like that. He still maintained respect and honor, but he chose the side of who God was on. That's it. Let's leave it at that. Tamshi.
And Jonathan said unto David, come and let us go out into the field. And they went out, both of them, into the field. And Jonathan said unto David, O Lord God of Israel, when I have sounded my father about tomorrow any time, or the third day, and behold, if there be good toward David, and I then send not unto thee, and show it thee? The Lord do so, and much more to Jonathan. But if it please my father to do these evil, then I will show it thee, and send thee away, that thou mayest go in peace, and the Lord be with thee, as he hath been with my father.
You need to get closer. You need to make these words bigger or something, and also take your time. You're doing great, man. Don't second guess. All right. You know how to read very well. Just continue. Okay. All right. And Jonathan said to David, O Lord God of Israel, when I have sounded my father about tomorrow, any time, or the third day, because the new moon was celebrated for 3 days, right? Did it say here? Okay. Forbid that I should not die. And then we show thee my father. Okay. And it says tomorrow is the new moon. Okay. Verse 5. It says Kodesh. Nothing. Wayomer David el Yehonatan, Hine, Chodesh Machar. Tomorrow, the new moon or the month, right? And so they called that whole 3 days Kodesh, but they also reference a month as Kodesh. Okay? So, okay, we'll see here later on. Let's go. He said, tomorrow, if I sound my father, when I have sounded my father about tomorrow, anytime, or the third day, and behold, if there be good toward David, and then I send not unto thee, and show it thee, the Lord do so much more to Jonathan. But if it please my father to do thee evil, then I will show it thee, and send thee away, that thou mayest go in peace, and the Lord be with thee, as he hath been with my father. And thou shalt not only while I yet live show me the kindness of the Lord, that I die not, but also that thou shalt not cut off thy kindness from my house forever. No, not when the Lord had cut off the enemies of David, every one from the face of the earth. So Jonathan made a covenant with the house of David, saying, let the Lord even require it at the hand of David's enemies. Right? And Jonathan caused David to swear again, because he loved him, for he loved him as his own soul. You say, well, why are you making me swear, man? You don't believe me? He said Jonathan made him swear again because he loved him. We backwards, man. And Jonathan said to David, verse 18.
Then Jonathan said to David, tomorrow is the new moon, and thou shalt be missed, because thy seat will be empty. And when thou hast stayed 3 days, then thou shalt go down quickly and come to the place where thou didst hide thyself when the business was in hand, and shalt remain by the stone Ezel.
Okay, go ahead, scoot over a little bit. All right. And I will shoot 3 arrows on the side, as though I shot at a mark. And behold, I will send a lad, saying, go find the arrows. And if I expressly say to the lad, behold, the arrows are on this side of thee, take them, then come thou, for there is peace to thee, and no hurt, as the Lord liveth. But if I say thus to the young man, behold, the arrows are beyond thee, go thy way, for the Lord has sent thee away. And as touching the matter which thou and I have spoken of, behold, the Lord be between thee and me forever. And so David hid himself in the field, and when the new moon was come, the king sat him down to eat to meat. And the king sat upon his seat, as at other times, even upon the seat of the wall. And Jonathan arose, and Abner by the Saul's side, and David's place was empty. Nevertheless, Saul spake not anything today, for he thought something had befallen him. He is not clean. Surely he is not clean, because he wouldn't show up if he was unclean, because they practiced the cleanliness laws. And he didn't have to be unclean because he had an issue where the seat he sat on would have been unclean. But if he was unclean by chance, by night, or by something where uncleanness could be transferred, because that's another thing we need to go over, how uncleanness is transferred. And that's in a lesson to come. But we need to figure out how uncleanness is transferred. Everything that a man sit on, if he does not have an issue, because he got unclean and transmitted it from a different way by touching something, does not mean that the thing that he sit on now becomes unclean, right? He's unclean. So you wouldn't go around people for certain uncleannesses, because if they touch you, you would make them unclean, right? And they had a separation between unclean and clean. It seems a little controversial that Israelites will be allowed to cremate the dead. That's not in the book. We didn't do that. And I know Chief Abraham answered that and said, our forefathers didn't do that. We buried the bones. And it is in the book where it says ashes to ashes and dust to dust, right? And the word for ashes doesn't necessarily mean something that was burned, right, in Hebrew. So we're supposed to return to the dirt from whence God made our flesh, because once the spirit returns back to God, then the flesh should return back to the earth, both from the place or from where they came, rather say, right? And so that's why we should not be cremated, but we should be buried, right? And that's the way of the earth. That's part of the order of life that God set up. Okay. All right. So now we see that the new moon was 3 days, and David didn't show up. And then it came to pass on the morrow, which was the second day of the first day he didn't show up. Saul said, maybe he's unclean. And it came to pass on the morrow, which was the second day of the month. But it don't say second day of the month in Hebrew. It says second day of the Kodesh. Those whole 3 days was called Kodesh. The celebration of the new moon was called Kodesh. Not necessarily the day that the month began was the first day of the Kodesh. Okay? So that David's place was empty. If that's the case, then it would have been every 29, according to the cycle of the moon, and a half days, and that can't work that way. So it had to be 30 days. And then it would have been 4 weeks of 7 days, right? So we have to calculate all of these things according to what we know and what we're reading in the book, and everything has to match up together. So the second day of the new moon is where it translates, not of the month. Even though the word for Kodesh is what we also call the word for moon in English, we need to start thinking in Hebrew. We need to just start saying new moon instead of month. That David's place was empty, and Saul said unto Jonathan his son, wherefore cometh not the son of Jesse to meet, neither yesterday nor today? And why do you think he turned to Jonathan? Because he knows Jonathan is on David's side, or that they, he's feeling David, and that's his man, that's his friend. So he's asking Jonathan, what's up, man? He hiding? You would know, because you his friend. And Jonathan answered Saul, David earnestly asked leave of me to go to Bethlehem. And he said, let me go, I pray thee, for our family had to sacrifice in the city, and my brother, he had commanded me to be there. Another thing to note, his brother commanded him to be there, his older brother, regardless of his status, even though he was already anointed, even though he was already in the king's house as one of the king's servants. He know that even though this wasn't true, he know that this will fly with the king, because this is the order of life and the order of honor that our fathers kept. So he said, my brother commanded me to be there, and now if I found favor in thine eyes, let me get away. This is what Jonathan is telling Saul that David asked of Jonathan. I pray thee and see my brethren. Therefore he cometh not unto the king's table. Then Saul's anger was kindled against Jonathan, and he said unto him, thou son of a perverse, rebellious woman, do not I know that thou hast chosen the son of Jesse to thine own confusion, and unto the confusion of thy mother's nakedness? Said mother's shame is what it says in Hebrew. For as long as the son of Jesse liveth upon the ground, thou shalt not be established, nor thy kingdom. Wherefore now send and fetch him unto me, for he shall surely die. And Jonathan knew that David was anointed and set up to be king, and it didn't bother him, because it was God's plan. And Jonathan feared God. And Jonathan answered Saul his father and said unto him, wherefore shall he be slain? What hath he done? And what? Verse 33.
And Saul cast a javelin at him to smite him, whereby Jonathan knew that it was determined of his father to slay David. So Jonathan arose from the table in fierce anger, and did eat no meat the second day of the month, for he was grieved.
The second day of the new moon.
Because his father had done him shame. And it came to pass in the morning that Jonathan went out into the field at the time appointed with David, and a little lad with him. And he said unto his lad, run, find out now the arrows which I shoot. And as the lad ran, he shot an arrow beyond him. And when the lads and the was come to the place of the arrow which Jonathan had shot, Jonathan cried after the lad and said, "Is not the arrow beyond thee?" And Jonathan cried after the lad, "Make speed, haste, stay not." And Jonathan's lad gathered up the arrows and came to his master.
And that was the sign for David to keep him pushing, because there was evil determined to him, right, by Saul. Okay, so okay, hold that. I want you to go to Psalms chapter 81.
Okay.
Concerning the new moon, because in doing some research, come to find out, it does not say when the moon hides itself.
81.
And this is where studying the language and understanding the structure of words in masculine and feminine contexts, past, present, and future, whether it's a verb or a noun, that as we go, we learn. And then you can't just think that we could pick out 3 letters from the middle of the word and it will be the exact root word, or the end of the word, and it will be the exact root to what it means when you look up those 3 letters as the root word in the dictionary. Because for those of us that study Hebrew, every word, you don't find the words as they're written in the Torah like you would in English, in the dictionary, every letter, and then you look up that word and it's spelled the same way in the dictionary. No, every letter has a 3-letter root word, and then it's conjugated with prefixes and suffixes according to whether it's used in past, present, or future, and also according if it's used as a verb, as a noun, as an adjective, because the word is a concept. The 3 letters of the root is a concept, and it can be used depending on what prefix and suffixes you put on it as a noun. It can be used depending on the prefix, the letters before and after those 3 words. 1 letter, 2 letters. If it's a hey, a noon, a yod, before this 3-letter root word, it could be changed to, now it's no longer used as a noun. It's used as a verb, an action word, right? Hitpa'al, which is the reference where it could start with a yod or a hey, right? And that means an action, a doing, right? And so this changes now the concept of that 3-letter root word to mean it's doing something instead of it is a thing, right? Or a noun, right? And I know that's a lot to wrap our head around. I'm trying to explain it in as simple as possible. But also, if the word is a masculine or feminine word, then like Chief Shama was explaining today in teachings, if it ends with im, which is a yod and final mem, then that will make it plural because the word is masculine. If it ends with ot, then that will make it plural because the word itself is a feminine word. And masculine words have masculine attributes, masculine purposes, masculine concepts, right? Feminine words have feminine concepts, feminine purposes, like the word etzim is trees, right? And it brings forth fruit that contains a seed. Same thing like men contain the seed and their ability to bring forth fruit, but it must be planted in something in order for that to happen, which is Adama, which is the feminine, and it brings up the thing that bears the seed and the fruit, right? And so the fruit itself is feminine, and it also contains a seed, just like the woman, right? But the tree is what came from a seed that was planted in the feminine thing. And we can see that throughout the order of life, how it's set up by the words that God used to describe the order that he set up with masculine and feminine words. And I think it's important for us to understand that when we look up things in Hebrew, so that we can know how this word means this in this context, and it means this in another context, or even though these 2 words contain the same letters of the same root word, they're not from the same root word. And we got to figure out when they are different according to context. So this is what we're going to do here in Psalms chapter 81. And again, I know that's a lot to take in when you haven't studied the language. Some people that study language might understand what I'm saying, but just bear with me. I'm going to try to do my best to explain it in simple terms. So Psalms 81 verse 4 says, "Blow up the trumpet in the new moon on the time appointed on our solemn feast day." Well, in Hebrew, it doesn't read like that. It says tiku, that like a command or a action order to perform an action. That's where the tau comes from, right? in tiku, where the root word might have been nakwa, right? So tiku, to blow, bakodesh, referencing the new moon, or during the time of the new moon celebrations, those 3 days, we would blow the horn, right? And shofar, it says in this verse, shofar is the ram's horn, right? So blow the ram's horn in the Kodesh, right? Which is the new moon, those 3 times during when we were commanded. Because why is it commanded it? Because also in Numbers chapter 10, verse 10, God commands Moses to make 2 silver horns, which is not called shofar. They are not ram's horn. They are trumpets. And I believe the word is zitzerot or something like that. Hatzotzrot or something like that. I may be off, but you can check it out for those of you that's reading Hebrew. And that's a silver trumpet that Moses was commanded to make in Numbers chapter 10, 2 silver trumpets that were for the calling of assemblies, that were calling for tribes. And he also commanded that they be blown. I believe it's also verse 10, chapter 10, verse 10, Numbers, where they be blown at the new moon. So David is just reiterating here what God said to do during the new moon. And then we also sent up offerings during the new moon, which you'll find in Numbers chapter 28. And then it says, Bakase leyom chagenu. In English, it says, in the time appointed on our solemn feast day. We looked that up in Hebrew, and bakase, because kasa is the word for to hide or to be kept secret, we say bakasa, in her hiding. But there's no, if we use kasa with the hey at the end, it's not a reference to her, right? It would just be in hiding, right? Leyom chagenu. Can we stop, please? Thank you. In the day of our feast. So we know that the new moon was not called a feast day or a moaday or a kag, which in this verse, David is saying in our feast, the kag, our kag, kagenu, our kag. That's the word used for feast. And that's only used in Hebrew. This is why words tell us, the book tell us what words mean, because David used the word kag in Psalms 81. And the only days that were called kag were the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the Feast of Weeks, and the Feast of Booths. The rest of the days are not called kag. They're called mikra kodesh or moadeh, appointed times. So David is clearly referencing one of those feast days or the feast days themselves. Now, if we look at when we were commanded to blow the horns, we were commanded to blow on feast days. Okay? So, and new moons. And not every appointed time. Now, it would make sense because when we look up another definition of keseh, which is what it says, ba keseh, keseh is a direct reference by definition to the full moon. Okay? Keseh is a definition. One of the definitions of keseh is not kaseh, not kasa, but keseh, right? Is a reference to full moon. Now, kes can also mean to cover. The hey at the end of the word is not a reference to her in reference to the moon, but keseh is the entire word in reference to the full moon. In the full moon. Now, why would King David say, blow the horn in the full moon on our feast day? We didn't celebrate full moons. But if you look at 2 of the feast days were commanded to be celebrated on the 15th day of the month, which is the new moon. If the month started with the beginning of the month, would have been the new moon. It takes 14 days for the moon to reach her fill, and the 15th day would have been a full moon as within the moon cycle. So if King David is saying blow up the shofar on the new moon as it was commanded Moses, and at the full moon on our feast day, because the feast days came in at the time of the month when the moon was full. God didn't tell us that was the observance, but King David made an observance to understand that the 15th day of the month was the full moon on our feast day, is what he said. And he used the word cog. David used the word cog. See, today we have this thing where we're like, we don't observe the new moon. You know why? Because people do new full moon celebrations. People celebrate or worship the moon and use the full moon as those celebrations. David wrote this, who is not an observer of the moon. He is not observing moon worship. He just made a simple observance, a simple eyewitness account that the 15th day of the month, when our feast days come in, is a full moon. On our feast days, what he said. And he used the word cog. And again, the book tells us what words mean. Only the 3 appointed times, Feast of Unleavened Bread, Feast of Weeks, Feast of Booths, came in on, or rather say, used the word cog in Hebrew. So that's clearly what David is referencing. And it just so happens that we know for sure that 2 of them came in on the new moon, the 15th day of the month. Okay, something to think about. I told you we're going to use the book. I ain't going to tell you what I think. I'm going to show you what we're reading in the book. Now I want to go back to these notes because there's some references in the book to understand a few things. And we're also going to understand prophecy. I'm going to try to do this in the next 30 minutes. And we'll get through it. Here we go. The historical evidence. Hold on. In academic biblical criticism, because that's what we're going to call it, because they criticize the book, right? So I use the word criticism. When people, the academia of the world, criticize the Bible. The book of Daniel's prophecies, especially the reference to the abomination of desolation, right? Go to Daniel chapter 7. And the times and a half, which everybody always trying to figure out, but don't want to use the book to explain what times and a half means and what's so significant about it. Because it tells us what's going to happen, what's not going to happen during these times. And everybody referencing like they think it's something that's going to happen today. Like it still hasn't happened yet. 99% of the prophecies that we read about in the book already happened. Or 95%, rather say. And that's not an accurate number. That's just me off the top of my head. Because there's only a few that didn't happen yet. And there are some that have happened already and gonna happen again. And that's for us to be able to understand when we know history. And if you don't know history, how are you going to be able to understand prophecy? Because you're going to be sitting waiting for something to happen as if it never happened yet, and it already happened. That time and a half, and the abomination of desolation are understood as a direct reflection of the real world crisis that took place in Jerusalem under the Syrian Greek Seleucid king Antiochus IV, surnamed Epiphanes, between 167 and 164 BCE. The historical evidence found in the books of the Maccabees, combined with the tracking of that specific timeline, provides context to this correlation. Okay, historical event, the desecration of the temple, right? Let's go to Daniel chapter 7 so we can see what this prophecy is saying. And let's go to verse. I'm going to start at verse 20. Just follow, okay? And the 10 horns that were in his head, because there's a vision that Daniel is seeing. If you can put this in your notes to go check back and read this full chapter in full. Make sure you read the Torah every day, that we can stay grounded, that we don't get thrown off when we read certain things in other books, and that you have that groundation, that I like to call it, where you can't be swayed by other people's opinion when you read other parts of the book that may conflict with the mentality that God is trying to teach us in the Torah. Right? He said, and the 10 horns, because he's seeing a vision of a beast. And the beasts, the 4 beasts represent kingdoms, but also in this 4th beast, the 10 horns represent kings, right? And of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the other which came up, and before whom 3 fell, because 3 kings fell in this empire of this 4th beast. And this 4th beast represents the Greco-Roman era, which we are still in today, by the way, right? Because it's the children of the Romans that run the government here in the United States. And it's the children of the Greco-Romans that still run the kingdom in England, that took over different parts of the world like India, South Africa, and wherever else they set up shop, right? Now a lot in South America as well, Argentina, and now Venezuela is what we're seeing. And they're doing it the same way they did in ancient times, where they put the person, the ruler of that country as the king, the ruler, the president, the governor, under their rules, right? There's still a few families that run the world today. And these are all the children of the Romans, the Greco-Romans. Esau is amongst them, but Esau is not the children who are running it. Just like Haman, Haman, the son of Hamadatha, was in the king's court in Assyria, right? I'm sorry, the Persian Medes Empire, right? Right next to King Ahasuerus, right? But he didn't run it, but he was given a high position where his word counted, right? And he was able to set up decrees and even wear the king's signet. It's the same way today, where Edom still holds certain places. And that's according to the prophecy of Isaac. And that's why God said, don't hate the Edomite, that's your brother. And stop saying, it's the Edomite fault, man. He did this to us, man. No, we did it to ourselves. Edom is just fulfilling the prophecy that Isaac blessed him with in the counter blessing, when he said, you're going to break the yoke and you're going to inherit the fat of the earth. Right? Okay. And we see it happening. Okay. Everything in this book is true. And before whom 3 fell, even of that horn that had eyes, one of the horns had eyes in the vision, and a mouth that spake very great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows. I beheld in the same horn made war with the saints and prevailed against them. Sound like the Maccabees. Because we're going to find out who this horn was. Until the Ancient of Days came. That's God. And judgment was given to the saints of the Most High. And the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. This is not only the time of the Maccabees. This is all the way up to today. And we the sons of the Maccabees. So you're going to have to fight too, peradventure. Are we prepared? Is your name going to be written? Or will it be forgotten? Yeah! Where we at? Until the Ancient of Days and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High, and the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. Thus he said, the 4th beast shall be the 4th kingdom upon the earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth. Greco-Roman Empire. And shall tread it down and break it in pieces. And the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise, and another shall rise after them, and he shall be diverse from the first, and he shall subdue 3 kings. And he shall speak great words against the Most High. Did not Antiochus go to war against Timotheus and Seleucid? Okay. I'm just saying. Check it out. And shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws. And they shall be given. That's what they did, right? They changed times, right? They changed the calendars, right? Weren't they the first ones to establish a world calendar that was spread out across the world? It's called the the Julian calendar first, right? That's when they added, Julius Caesar added the months July after him and August after his son Augustus. And shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand until a time and times. And it says the dividing of time in English, and it says, and the half of time. Okay. But the judgment shall sit, and they shall take away his dominion and consume it and destroy it unto the end. Okay. Hold that. Go to Daniel chapter 12. Okay.
Yeah, I'm there.
And accomplish. Okay, let's go to verse 7. Let's go to verse 6. Go ahead. You can read that for us, please.
And one said to the man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters of the river, how long shall it be to the end of these wonders?
Again, another vision God showed to Daniel, where a man clothed in linen. I'm going to go back to the beginning of this chapter. And at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince. It's known calling him a prince, but Michael was an angel, which standeth for the children of thy people, because he stands to protect or to fight for the nation of Israel. And they have other angels that fight for to protect other nations, superpowers. Okay. And there shall be a time of trouble, clothed in linen. Note that, the holy fabric, right? That God commanded the priest to wear also. And there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation, even to that same time. And at that time, thy people shall be delivered, every one that shall be found written in the book. What book you think he's talking about? Not this one. That's the book in the heavens that God got. And many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake. What? And many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life and some to shame and everlasting contempt, which tells me that the souls that's resting may not all be going through torment right now, but that time may come at a certain time. Maybe not at the time when the saints are risen up, because he also said in Psalm 50, he's going to put a two-edged sword in the hand of his saints to execute judgment upon the wicked. And his saints is going to be risen up, like Isaiah said, and my dead body shall arise with them. Like Ezekiel 37 says, when he says he's going to gather the bones together, he's going to put new sinews, new flesh on them, and then call to the four winds, that this north, east, south, and west, that they may blow life into them. And then King David going to be ruler over them all. And for last time I checked, David was long dead in the time of Ezekiel. Okay. I'm just saying, put two and two together here for those of us that don't know. And some to shame and everlasting contempt. And they that be wise shall shine as the brightness of the firmament. And they that turn many to righteousness as the stars forever and ever. So we ain't supposed to turn people away from this. We're supposed to turn people towards this. Because those are the ones that's going to come back as saints, that's going to shine forever and ever. There's only one forever. This life is not forever. So those of us that think that these prophecies are talking about this life, tell me one thing that is forever in this life. Nothing. Because when your life is over, it's not forever. Well, it meant forever according to your life. That's what you say. Look up the definition of forever. Right? And you want to get technical? Look up what it says in Hebrew. Pick a different part of the book, though, because I'm going to break it to you that the book of Daniel is not written in Hebrew. It's written in Aramaic. Right? Which we can still look up what these words mean, but we have to go by not studying the language or not having experience studying the language and being able to reference other parts of the book when we look up that word, because it's in a complete different language that is similar to Hebrew, but it doesn't share all of the same rules, logic, and words. So you can't use the book to tell you what the words mean in the book of Daniel, like we could use the rest of the book to tell us what the words mean in Genesis. We could use the rest of the book to tell us what the words mean in Chronicles. We could do that because it's all written in the same language in the Hebrew, that we could use the book to back up what it says in this chapter to see what the word actually means, even if it differs from the dictionary. We can't do that with the book of Daniel. We got to go by whatever they dictionaries tell us that this word means in Aramaic, right? So find somewhere else in the book that says forever. And say, oh, well, how do you know it says that then here? Well, because Daniel speaks the same way Moses spoke. That's how. Because Daniel speaks the same way Isaiah spoke. That's how. Because all the prophets speak the same and had the same understanding of what forever means. It wasn't like you read the New Testament and Mark said something that John didn't say. They said two totally different things. Don't happen like that in the Old Testament. They all sound exactly the same and speak the same message and use the words in the same exact manner with the same logic. But thou, O Daniel, Shut up the words and seal the book, even to the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased, just like today. You know what they call this? The information age. We out of the technology era. That was from 90s to 2000s to 2010. 2010 and up, you know what this called? The information era. You know, information, data is the most valuable commodity on the earth right now. Yeah, people pay for information more than anything else in the world right now. It sounds like what we're reading, and knowledge shall be increased. After this information era, what you think? People just going to go back to being stupefied? No, you know how much the internet is allowing people to share information that they can learn certain things? That's why I don't discard everything that I hear or read. I use the book as our foundation of truth to be able to bounce it off of, to see if it's true or not. And then I look up other stuff, because not everything you're going to find in this information is going to be able to bounce it off the book. So you know what you read in the foundation of the order of life that God established in the book. So now you won't go astray when you find new information, because it still has to match up with that foundation of the order of life that God set up. Then I, Daniel, looked, and behold. And God gotta open your eyes to certain things. And he ain't gonna do that if you ain't making no sacrifices for these laws. Yeah, I'm gonna tell you, yeah, I took my family here, I took my family there. We still do this. Yeah, I ain't perfectly separated. I'm gonna expose myself. You know why? Because I ain't gotta be right in everything that I do in my household for the words that I'm spitting out of the book to be correct. Because there's no man that sinneth not. But I have a made up mind that I'm going to do this law, and I made sacrifices, and I'm going to continue to make sacrifices for these laws. And in doing that, I'm going to continue to study with simplicity of heart and with humility, asking that God give me a new heart and continue to show me his ways and continue to teach me and reveal things to me out of the book. And you can't do that if you ain't applying what you're reading. So I'm going to put myself on blast. I'm going to be transparent. I'm going to be vulnerable. And that's okay. Because I ain't scared of you. I feel God. And in doing that, it keeps me humble to know that I ain't right in everything. And I still got a long way to go and a lot to learn, but I'm working on me. And I hope that's inspiring you to work on you. That we can all serve God. Because those that turn many to righteousness will shine as the stars forever. I ain't going to discourage you and tell you, yeah, you still do this. God don't want you. You ain't going to hear those type of teachings coming off this, not off of this platform right here. You're going to hear things for me to tell you things like, you could be David. You could be Abraham. Yeah, you can't be Abraham in that you had never sinned, but you could be like unto Abraham moving forward. All it takes is a made-up mind. Study, read the book, entertain yourself with the word of God. Pray, ask God for these things. Tell him, remove pride far from me, remove a lying tongue from my mouth, keep back my hands from presumptuous iniquity, open my heart to thy law, let my soul pursue thy commandments, create within me a new heart, that I may seek out all thy ways and walk in them. These are things we got to ask God for. Let me not follow after the sight of mine eyes. But let me seek to use the free will that thou hast granted me to do thy will, O Most High God. This is what we're supposed to be asking. But thou, Daniel, shut up the words and seal in the book, even to the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. Then I, Daniel, looked, and behold, there stood other two, the one on this side of the bank of the river and the other on that side of the bank of the river. And one said to the man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters of the river, he's standing on the waters of the river, how long shall it be to the end of these things? This is why our father told, make it like Jake was walking on waters, right? They took what I ain't stutter. That's why our fathers wrote the story about Jake, saying that he walked on waters, using references from the book of our prophets to substantiate their lies. when they were commissioned by the Romans to spread sun worship through the story of Nimrod and his bastard child that he had with his mama, Tom, and call it after the name God is our Savior, and say he's God. Oh, wait, my bad, he ain't God, he's the son of God. Oh, wait a minute, but he's out of the line of David. But wait a minute, I'm sorry, he didn't have a father at an actual line of David, because, you know, God is his father, but then he's his son, and he's God at the same. It's confusion. But this is the way they did it. And they used certain parts of our history and the truth of the prophecies that God relayed through his prophets, through the mouth of his prophets and the words of the prophets, to substantiate their lies, so that the next generation of their children in that era of the time of the Greco-Romans, in the time of the Maccabees, that once the Maccabees died out, the rest of the families would follow it, because they would believe that he's just like the prophets in the book. Mark is just like, you know, Isaiah, and John, you know, he's just like Ezekiel. And no, it was a trick. That's why they don't sound the same. That's why they're not kicking the same message. And I heard the man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters of the river, when he held up his right hand and his left hand unto the heaven, and swear by him that liveth forever, that it shall be for a times and a half. And when he shall have accomplished to scatter the power of the holy people, all these things shall be finished. And I heard and understood not. And he said, go thy way. And I understood not. Then said I, O my Lord, what shall be the end of these things? And he said, go thy way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed till the time of the end. Many shall be purified and made white and tried. And it don't mean they're going to be made white people. It means they're going to be pure, clear. Right? But the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand. And from the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, these are keys to understanding this prophecy, and understanding how days were counted, and months and years, and the abomination that maketh desolate set up, there shall be 2,290 days. There shall be, 1,290 days. Blessed be he that waiteth and cometh not to the 1,305 and 30 days. Okay. Now, for us to understand what times and a half, we're going to look in the book of the Maccabees to determine this. Right. And in 167 BCE, Antiochus IV sought to forcibly Hellenize Judea. He outlawed the Torah, banned circumcision, and halted the daily sacrifices in the Second Temple. As recorded in 1 Maccabees 1:54, let's go there. 1 Maccabees chapter 1, go to verse 54. You get it?
Not yet.
Okay.
Just...
And also alluded to in 2 Maccabees chapter 6, verses 2 through 5, Antiochus erected a pagan altar to Zeus Olymp, right? Olymp one. And that's also where we read it in here called Jupe. The abomination of Jupe was set up, because if we also know in our history that it was called Zeus according to the Greeks, and the Romans called it Jupe. And since this was written in the time of the Romans, but in the language of Greece, because our fathers didn't speak Hebrew. Okay. So the scribes in the time of the Maccabees wrote it in Greek, because their children that survived through that era were born and raised in Greco-Roman Judea, where it means it was still our land, but we didn't own nothing. We were slaves. We were servants. And the children were brought up learning Latin as their language, learning Greek as their language, and not Hebrew. So this is why the scribes of the book of the Maccabees wrote it in Greek, so that they could understand it. And that's why it's called Jupe, because they wrote it in the time of the Roman era after it happened, right? Or rather say during when it was happening and published in that time. And at the transition point where Rome was taking over Greece. If you read, that was the time of Jonathan and the late life of Judah Maccabees, right? When he died, Rome had just taken over. And if you read the book of the Maccabees, that's what happened. So that's why it went from being called Zeus in some texts and Jupe in what we read in the book. And that's what they set up in the temple on the grounds of the inner court. And it was a statue. And also erected a pagan altar to Zeus or Jupe on the top of the altar of burnt offering, the holy altar of burnt offering, and sacrifice swine upon it. This blasphemous defilement is the literal historical event known as the Abomination of Desolation in Daniel chapter 12. Okay, verse, what verse was that? 7 or 25, I think. Okay. The Maccabean rebels led by Judas Maccabee, launched a guerrilla war to reclaim Jerusalem. They successfully recaptured the Temple Mount, purified the sanctuary, and built a new altar and rededicated it. The daily sacrifices were restored on the 25th day of the Hebrew month Kislev in 164 BCE, which matches in the Apocrypha to line up with the 145th or 148th year of the king of the Greeks. And this event is celebrated, became known later as Hanukkah, right? So let's go ahead, read for me, First Maccabees, chapter 1, verse 54.
54?
Yes.
Almost there.
Okay, right there.
Now the 15th day of the month
Kislev,
in the 145th year, they set up the abomination of desolation upon the altar and builded idol altars through the cities of Judah.
Throughout the cities of Judah on every side.
Throughout the cities of Judah on every side, and burnt incense at the doors of their houses and in the streets. And when they had rent in pieces the books of the law which they found, burnt them with fire.
Okay. Now we're going to go to 2 Maccabees chapter 6, verse 2. Now it says here, chapter 6, verse 2. Not long after this, the king sent an old man of Athens to compel the Jews to depart from the laws of their fathers and not to live after the laws of God. Same thing we read in Daniel, where he says, where we read, Daniel 7, where he's going to speak great things against the Most High and shall wear out the saints of the Most High to change times and laws. And they shall be given into his hand until a times and a half of a time. Okay, that's the way it translates. Now going back to 2 Maccabees, he says, not long after this, the king sent an old man of Athens to compel the Jews to depart from the laws of their fathers and not to live after the laws of God, and to pollute also the temple in Jerusalem, and to call it the temple of Jupe Olymp. See, same name, Zeus or Jupe. There was the same God, one Roman name, one Greek name, and that in Gerizim of Jupe, the defender of strangers, as they did desire that dwelt in that place. The coming in of this mistress was sore and grievous to the people, for the temple was filled with the reviling of the Gentiles, and with harlots, had to do with women within the circuit of the holy places, and besides that, brought in things that were not lawful. Okay. Now let's go back here. Here's the time parallel. When analyzing the books of the Maccabees alongside Daniel, a fascinating chronological parallel emerges regarding how long this desolation lasted. 3-year account. According to 1 Maccabees 1:54 and 1 Maccabees 4:52 to 42, 52 to 54. I'm going to read that for you right now. 1 Maccabees 4, verse 52. It says, now on the 25th day of the 9th month, which is called the month Kislev, and the 148th year, they rose up betimes in the daybreak and offered sacrifice according to the law upon the new altar of the burnt offerings which they had made. Now it tells us previously that the king Antiochus made a decree to set up these altars in Jerusalem on the 25th day of Kislev, which happens to coincide in the 9th month of the Hebrew calendar, or the 9th month of the calendar at that time, the Near Eastern calendar, right, is what we're going to call it, because it wasn't only the Hebrews that adhered to this calendar, right, but adhered to the calendar. But the 9th and 25th, the 9th month corresponds with the 12th month in the Greco-Roman calendar, or rather say the Gregorian calendar that we follow today. So this would have been around the time, the 25th of Kislev corresponds with the time of the winter solstice, which is between the 21st and the 25th of December every year on one of those days in between. Sound familiar? Jake, the sun god. Yeah. And it's the same God that they were worshiping back then, just called by a different name, Jup or Zeus. Okay? Who they called God, the God of gods. Okay? Just who they called that. Okay? So how they reference to Jake today, right? Just showing you. And this happened when the Romans set up, or the Greeks set up that statue and that altar upon the altar of the holy altar of the temple. They did it on the 25th day of the 9th month, which corresponds with the winter solstice. So when our fathers took the temple back, it happened on the same exact day, on the 25th day of the 9th month, when we took it back in the 148th year, right? He said they rose up betimes in the morning, 148th year of the king. That king started reigning. I mean, that abomination of desolation was set up in the 145th year of that king. And the king we're talking about is that horn that it was speaking about in the book of Daniel. And that was Antiochus IV, surnamed Epiphanes. And offered sacrifice according to the law upon the new altar of burnt offerings, which is when they rededicated the altar. Happened on the same day that they set up their abomination 3 years later. Look at what time and what day the heathen had profaned it. Even in that same day was it dedicated with songs and citherns and harps and cymbals. Then all the people fell on their faces, worshiping and praising the God of heaven who had given them good success. And so they kept the dedication of the altar 8 days and offered burnt offerings with gladness and the sacrifice of deliverance and praise. They decked also the forefront of the temple with crowns of gold and with shields, and with gates of the chambers they renewed and hanged doors upon them. Where do you think they got this gold? For slaying the Greeks. Thus there were very great gladness among the people, for that the reproach of the heathen was put away. Moreover, Judas and his brethren with the whole congregation of Israel ordained that the days of the dedication, Chanukah, of the altar should be kept in their season from year to year by the space of 8 days, from the 25th day of the month Kislev, with mirth and gladness. Okay, so which means it would have been 5 days, since it was 30-day months, and then 3 more days into the beginning of the next month, right? And at that time also they builded up Mount Zion with high walls, strong towers, and the Gentiles. I believe it's chapter 10. It says in 2 Maccabees that we observe this time like unto the Feast of Tabernacles. There was no gift given. There was no lights. There was no setting up a Hanukkah bush. There was no lights that miraculously burned for 8 days. No, there was definitely no candles, right? So let's see. In the first, according to Maccabees 1:54 and 1 Maccabees 4:52 to 54, the pagan altar was erected on the 15th day of Kislev in the year 145 of the Seleucid era, which is 164 BCE. and the first pagan sacrifice occurred on the 25th of Kislev, the temple was rededicated exactly 3 years later to the day on the 25th of Kislev in the 148th year of the Seleucid Empire. Thus, the literal sacrifice of swine on the altar lasted exactly 3 years. Time, which is 1 year, times, which is 2 years and a half, equals 3.5 years. 1 year plus 2 years and a half. While the physical altar was defiled for 3 years exactly before we took it back and rededicated it, the broader military occupation of Jerusalem, the decree by Antiochus IV attempting to abolish the law of the Torah, and initial edicts to halt the daily temple rituals began roughly 6 months prior to the erection of the statue of Jupe, known as the Abomination of Desolation. It's where we get 3.5 years. I said this before, but I'm putting it all into writing to show that we could use the book to decipher the book. It's not something where we need other scholars' testimonies to be able to figure this out using other history books. You can use the book to decipher the book. And the book tells us what words mean. Now, there are still months of the year that were named in the book, some by God, some were named according to our father, what our fathers named them, and some our fathers named according to gods and goddesses that we worshipped in Babylon. And right about now, the sun is setting on the East Coast, and since a lot of our viewers are there, I'm going to cut it short here. And next week, we're going to continue and we're going to go through the definitions of the names of the months, which names were used the book to decipher which months were named by God, which months were named by us, our fathers, and the influences that were upon them from where they lived and the captivities of the time that determined or that influenced them to name the months after certain names, right? And not all of them are after the names of Babylonian gods and goddesses, and which we will learn a little bit more now, that we could still call the names by, and NISAN is not one of them, and neither is TAM, definitely the names of Babylonian gods, and we should not be using those names, right? So we'll also go into the characteristics and the culture of our people and why they named the names certain times, because we were agricultural and shepherds. So I hope that everybody is inspired by the words of the Most High. I hope that this information will cause us to look at things differently as we read the book, to understand there's a lot more that we have to learn, and that you're never going to get to the full bottom of it, especially concerning the calendar, because God took these things away from us, but God did leave clues planted and seeds planted throughout the book for us to be able to understand why things are the way they are today, and it's because of our sins why it is this way, and that we need to use the book for our understanding, not adding to, not taking away, not using other books to prove the book wrong, but in fact use the book to prove the book true, right? And so I hope this inspires a humility in all of us. I hope this information inspires a simplicity of heart, that we come to the Most High and read the book in simplicity of heart, and instead of acting like we're trying to figure out something or look for an answer to me being smarter than you, or being able to prove this person wrong or these people wrong, we do it with simplicity of heart and humility to be able to understand where we need to make reparations with our God, where we need to patch up and close the breach that we made in betrayal against our God. And now it's our job that, as it was our mind to turn from him, as our mind to turn and betray our God, we seek him 10 times more in returning. With that, I hope that everybody was inspired. I hope that we all humble ourselves, turn from our evil ways, and walk upright before the Most High our God. I bid you have the ancient tongue of our fathers. Shabbat Shalom Lekem.
Shabbat Shalom.
Oh, before I go, did I miss any questions? or does anybody have any questions? I'm compiling a Google Doc with folders with all of this information. I will be sharing it with anybody that wants it. Share your email with me. This is one of those cases where closed mouth don't get fed. If you want it, I'll share it with you. If you say, I don't really care about it, who cares? You know what he talking about? Then that's fine. You don't have to have it. But this is not me saying I'm only gonna share with certain people. No, I'm gonna share who asked for it, because I ain't gonna be trying to share with people that don't want it. Right? God told Ezra to deliver these books to the people, but these last 70, because he wrote 104 books. Yes, the prophet Ezra wrote more than just 2 books or 3 books that we have. He wrote over 104 books, and he told them, these you give to the people. These last 70 of the books, you only give to men that are such as like unto yourself. And so I always want to say, whoever wants it, you can share with me your email, or you can text me or email me at Zakaryah, Zakaryah.Israel@gmail.com, and I will share this and more information with you about the holidays, the history of the holidays, about clean and unclean beasts, clean and unclean fish, with sources for everything that you could look up and see pictures and see archaeological findings. Also, what I didn't mention here is that you might have heard me say in the chat that I don't visit museums, and that was not 100% true. I don't go to museums that display pictures and statues, because those are idol gods. I'm not going to an ancient Egyptian exhibit because they're going to show you about ancient Egyptian gods and goddesses and the artifacts that prove Egyptian culture. But what museums I would go to, like a museum that I visited with my brother Yehoshua in LA on the campus of USC campus, they had an exhibit about ancient Israelite and Canaanite artifacts found during the time of Israel's habitation of the land of Canaan. So when our fathers inhabited that land, which God gave to us and promised to us, which we took in the time of Joshua, there were still Canaanite artifacts that we did not get rid of that were found in the land. So in that exhibit, I also saw what the exhibit called could have been either a toy or a calendar. And it was a stone plaque that had 33 rows of 10 that counted the month, right? And the writing said that they believed there could have been a calendar, even though it didn't match up exactly to the cycle of the moon, and that Israelites were taught in the law that we should follow the cycle of the moon, and it didn't have the information that we read here today, especially from the book, right? And so they were assuming that it was a toy, when now, after reading and studying what I found to compile this information, I believe was an actual calendar. Right. I also saw the seal that was found, Hezekiah's seal that was found, that says Hezekiah of the house of David. I also saw a artifact that said the house of David on it, that was a writing about from the kings, from the time of the kings. Right. And it was on a piece of stone. And they also had pieces of the chapiters of the king's palace that was destroyed, that were dug up in the city of David. Right? Or in Jerusalem, in the city of David, on the borders of Jerusalem, right? So these things count. And so I would go to a museum to observe this exhibit and to find out these things and to see these things, because when you start doing your research, you can say, I saw that with my own eyes, right? I also saw pieces of certain books from the Dead Sea Scrolls that are from the Old Testament, right? And so written in ancient Hebrew. And thank God, that he led me to the house of Chief Eleazar, where Chief told me, you're going to learn Hebrew. And I said, how? All I know is the alphabet. And he said, well, I got a whole library full of books. It look like you better get busy. And now I'm able to read ancient Hebrew and to see if what it says on this script or on this stone is actually what they're telling me that it says, right? And so this is how you're able to check your findings. So I'm not going to tell you nothing out the side of my face. I'm going to tell you what I've seen with my own eyes, what I've learned from the book, and I'm going to use the book to prove the book. With that, Shabbat Shalom.
Wait.
Oh, is there? Oh, reads Psalm 17, verse 14. Okay, I'm sorry. You said that like 3 times. All right. Yeah, give me that. Psalms. Go ahead. Read that. Go ahead. Read it. What are you waiting on me for, scribe?
From men which are thy hand, O Lord, from men of the world, which have their portion in this life, and whose belly thou fillest with thy hid treasure, they are full of children, and leave the rest of their substance to their babes.
Okay. Men of the world, which have their portion in this life, whose belly God fills with his hid treasures. They are full of children and leave the rest of their substance to their babes. Men which are thy hand, O Lord, from men of the world, which have their portion in this life. I like that. And supporting what we were just reading, how men are going to be God's sword. Men are going to do things to change times and laws. And it's all at the will of God because they are God's hand. But they have their portion in this life. And God filled their bellies, right? And they're full of children. And they're going to leave their substance to their children, to their babes. See, we can't get mad at what God did. You can't get mad at what God said. We can't argue and think to change it back because we're so smart. And God revealed to us, and we're chosen people. Certain things you're not going to counter. Follow the calendar that God gave us. This is just to give us an understanding of how the days were counted so that we understand how our fathers observed the days of the year. And so that also how we know when we start teaching people, yeah, our fathers did it this way. Our fathers did it this way. This is the time. This is how they counted it. I can show you in this part of the book. And it gives credibility to when we start teaching them other parts of the book because they say, oh, they're able to show me in the book of what they're talking about. And at the end of it all, it's important for us to know the calendar that our fathers followed because it's our culture. And our days were set up according to that calendar, right? Our observances, including the new moon. Anything else? Did I miss something? Any other questions, comments? Oh, y'all about to say minchat if you haven't already. Some probably already burned off. I don't know, knock someone like, son, I got, let me say my friend, son. I'm about to go up. All right, y'all. Shabbat Shalom. To be continued.